Donald Parker jolts awake, his heart racing as he finds himself tied down and forced to breed with an alien princess. The cold metal of the examination table presses against his back, a stark reminder that he's no longer on his solo mission to Mars. Bright lights assault his vision as he blinks rapidly, trying to make sense of his surroundings. The sterile room hums with advanced technology, far beyond anything he's encountered in his 35 years as a human astronaut. Panic sets in as he realizes the gravity of his situation. He's been abducted by aliens, and they have sinister plans for him. A door slides open with a soft hiss, revealing a figure that both fascinates and terrifies Donald. Princess Hope, heir to the denobulan throne, enters the room. Her silver bodysuit clings to her form, accentuating an alien physiology that's eerily similar to human anatomy. Her skin shimmers with an otherworldly iridescence, and her eyes hold a determination that sends chills down Donald's spine. "Welcome, Donald Parker," Hope says, her voice a mix of authority and urgency. "I apologize for the circumstances of our meeting, but the fate of my entire species hangs in the balance." Donald struggles against his restraints, his muscles straining. "What do you want from me?" he demands, voice hoarse with fear and anger. Hope approaches the table, her expression softening slightly. "Our species faces a genetic crisis. We need human DNA to ensure our survival, and you, Donald, have been chosen for your peak physical condition and genetic traits." The implications of her words hit Donald like a punch to the gut. He's not just a prisoner, he's a breeding stock. The room suddenly feels smaller, more oppressive. "You can't do this," Donald protests, his mind racing for a way out. "This is a violation of everything." Hope's fingers dance over a control panel, activating a series of machines around the table. Medical devices whir to life, scanning Donald's body and collecting genetic samples. The process is painless but deeply invasive, leaving him feeling exposed and vulnerable. "I understand your reluctance," Hope says, her voice tinged with a mix of sympathy and resolve. "But the fate of my people depends on this union." Donald watches in a mix of horror and involuntary fascination as Hope begins to remove her bodysuit. Her alien physiology is revealed, similar in many ways to humans, yet with subtle differences in skin texture and coloration that mark her as unmistakably extraterrestrial. As Hope approaches him, now unclothed, Donald's mind races. He searches desperately for a way to escape, to reason with her, to change the course of events. But the restraints hold firm, and Hope's determination is unwavering. Donald's body betrays him, responding to Hope's touch even as his mind recoils. He's caught in a maelstrom of conflicting sensations, fear, anger, and an unwanted arousal that shames him. As Hope initiates physical contact, Donald realizes the full weight of his situation. This isn't just about him anymore. The consequences of this forced union will ripple out, affecting human-alien relations, his own future, and possibly the fate of two species. With Hope poised above him, ready to begin the breeding process, Donald makes a last-ditch effort to appeal to her. "Please," he says, his voice cracking, "there has to be another way." But Hope's eyes, alien yet filled with a recognizable mix of duty and desperation, tell him that his pleas fall on deaf ears. The fate of the denobulan species hangs in the balance, and Donald Parker, unwilling astronaut turned breeder, is the key to their survival. Hope's eyes lock with Donald's, her alien features set with dedication. As she lowers herself onto him, Donald feels a surge of adrenaline course through his body. His muscles tense, and in that moment of heightened strength, he wrenches his right arm free from the restraint. The sudden movement startles Hope, causing her to lose balance. Donald seizes the opportunity, his free hand fumbling for anything he can use. His fingers brush against a control panel near the examination table, and he instinctively presses several buttons. Instantly, the room erupts into chaos. Blaring alarms pierce the air, and pulsating red lights bathe the sterile chamber in an eerie glow. Hope stumbles backward, her eyes wide with shock and confusion. "What have you done?" she cries out, her voice barely audible over the cacophony of alarms. Donald doesn't answer. Instead, he focuses on freeing himself from the remaining restraints. With his right arm loose, he manages to undo the straps holding down his left arm and legs. Just as he sits up, the entire ship lurches violently, throwing both him and Hope off balance. Donald tumbles to the floor, his bare skin slapping against the cold metal. He scrambles to his feet, his heart pounding in his chest. Hope struggles to regain her footing, her silver bodysuit now partially donned in the commotion. "The ship," Hope gasps, steadying herself against a wall. "We're descending. Too fast." Donald's astronaut training kicks in. He quickly scans the room, assessing the situation. "We need to get to the bridge," he says, surprising himself with the steadiness in his voice. Hope hesitates, her eyes darting between Donald and the door. The ship shudders again, making the decision for her. "Follow me," she commands, leading the way out of the examination room. They race through winding corridors, the red emergency lights casting long shadows as they run. Denobulan crew members rush past them, their alien features contorted with panic. Donald struggles to keep up with Hope's pace, his bare feet slapping against the metallic floor. They burst onto the bridge, a scene of utter chaos greeting them. Alien crew members frantically work at various stations, their hands flying over control panels covered in symbols Donald doesn't recognize. Through the main view screen, the rust-colored surface of Mars looms ever larger. "Report," Hope barks, her regal bearing reasserting itself despite the dire circumstances. A denobulan officer turns to her, his face ashen. "Princess, the emergency protocol has overridden our navigation systems. We're on a collision course with the planet's surface. We can't regain control." Donald steps forward, his eyes rapidly taking in the unfamiliar technology around him. "Let me help," he says, moving towards an unmanned station. The denobulan crew looks at him with a mixture of suspicion and desperation. Hope hesitates for a moment before nodding her assent. "Do it," she orders. Donald's hands hover over the alien controls, his mind racing to decipher their function. Years of training and experience guide his actions as he begins to input commands, working in tandem with the denobulan crew to stabilize the ship's descent. "We need to adjust our entry angle," Donald shouts over the blaring alarms. "If we hit the atmosphere at this trajectory, we'll burn up." Hope relays his instructions to her crew, who scramble to implement them. The ship's hull groans under the increasing stress as they enter Mars' thin atmosphere. Warning lights flash across every console, indicating multiple system failures. As Donald works, he notices a peculiarity in the ship's design. The propulsion system is configured in a way that's causing feedback loops in the navigation controls. It's a flaw that might not be apparent to the denobulans, but Donald's human perspective allows him to spot it. "Princess," he calls out to Hope, who's working at a nearby station. "I think I've found the problem, but fixing it will require rerouting power from several critical systems. It's risky, but it might be our only chance." Hope looks at him, her alien eyes searching his face. The trust she's about to place in him is monumental, and they both know it. After a tense moment, she nods. "Do it," she says, her voice firm. Donald quickly explains his plan to the denobulan engineers. They work together, human and alien hands moving in concert over the controls. The ship shudders violently as they implement the changes, and for a heart-stopping moment, it seems like they might have made things worse. Then gradually the ship begins to stabilize. The descent slows and the angle of entry improves. A collective sigh of relief passes through the bridge crew, but they're not safe yet. The Martian surface is still approaching rapidly, and Donald realizes they're going to have to attempt a landing. He turns to Hope, who's watching him with a new respect in her eyes. "We're going to have to land this ship," he says, wiping sweat from his brow. "And I don't think any of us are prepared for what comes after that." Hope nods, understanding the implications. They've survived the immediate crisis, but now they face the prospect of being stranded on a hostile alien world. As the red Martian landscape fills the view screen, Donald and Hope exchange a look of shared tenacity. Their previous roles as captor and captive have been cast aside, replaced by an alliance born of necessity and mutual respect. The ship continues its descent towards the Martian surface, carrying its human and denobulan passengers into an uncertain future. The alarms still blare, but they've faded into the background as everyone on the bridge focuses on the monumental task of landing safely on the unforgiving terrain of Mars. The red Martian landscape loomed ever closer as Donald and the denobulan crew worked frantically to stabilize the ship's descent. Donald's fingers flew over the alien controls, his mind racing to adapt his knowledge of Earth-based systems to this extraterrestrial technology. "We're approaching the surface too fast," he called out, his voice strained with concentration. "We need to fire the retro thrusters now." Hope relayed his instructions to her crew, who scrambled to comply. The ship shuddered violently as the thrusters engaged, slowing their descent, but not enough to ensure a smooth landing. "Brace for impact," Hope shouted, gripping the nearest console. The ship struck the Martian surface with a bone-jarring crash. Metal groaned, and sparks flew as the vessel skidded across the rocky terrain. Donald was thrown from his seat, his body slamming against the cold floor. For a moment, everything was chaos. Alarms blaring, crew members shouting, and the ship itself seeming to scream as it tore through the Martian soil. Then suddenly, stillness. Donald pushed himself up, wincing at the pain in his ribs. Smoke filled the bridge, and the acrid smell of burnt circuitry stung his nostrils. Through the haze, he saw Hope picking herself up, a trickle of silvery blood running down her forehead. "Is everyone all right?" she called out, her voice hoarse. A chorus of groans and affirmatives answered her. Donald stumbled to his feet, his eyes scanning the damaged bridge. The main view screen was cracked, but through it, he could see the rust-colored Martian landscape stretching to the horizon. "We made it," he breathed, almost not believing it himself. Hope approached him, her alien eyes filled with a mix of relief and concern. "Thanks to you," she said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "But we're not out of danger yet." As if to emphasize her point, a panel near them sparked and sputtered, causing them both to jump back. "We need to assess the damage," Donald said, slipping back into his astronaut training, "and secure the ship before we lose life support." Hope nodded, turning to her crew. "Initiate emergency protocols. I want a full damage report and start on repairs immediately." As the denobulan crew sprang into action, Donald and Hope made their way through the ship. The corridors were a maze of tangled wires and dented panels, the emergency lights casting an eerie red glow over everything. They reached the airlock, and Donald helped Hope seal it properly, ensuring no Martian atmosphere could seep in. As they worked, he couldn't help but notice how different things have felt between them now. The fear and anger he had felt earlier had been replaced by a grudging respect. "Your knowledge of Mars is invaluable," Hope said as they finished securing the airlock. "We'll need your help to survive here." Donald nodded, his mind already racing with the challenges they faced. "The Martian environment is hostile. We'll need to conserve our resources and be careful about exposure." As they spoke, a new voice cut through the air. "Princess, are you all right?" A tall, muscular denobulan strode towards them, his uniform marking him as a high-ranking officer. His eyes narrowed as they fell on Donald. "Commander Zix," Hope greeted him. "We're fine. Donald here has been instrumental in our survival." Zix's expression darkened. "With all due respect, Princess, this human was our prisoner. We can't trust him." Donald tensed, ready to defend himself, but Hope stepped between them. "He's earned my trust, Commander. We need his expertise if we're to survive on this planet." Zix opened his mouth to argue, but a violent tremor shook the ship, cutting him off. Donald stumbled, catching himself against the wall. "What was that?" he asked, alarm clear in his voice. Hope rushed to a nearby console, her fingers dancing over the controls. Her face paled as she read the display. "A dust storm is approaching, a big one." Donald's heart sank. He knew all too well the dangers of Martian dust storms. "We need to secure the ship now." As if on cue, the ship's alarms began to blare once more. The three of them raced back to the bridge, where the crew was working frantically to prepare for the impending storm. Through the cracked view screen, Donald could see the wall of red dust approaching, massive and terrifying. He turned to Hope and Zix, his face grim. "This storm could bury us alive if we're not careful. We need to seal every breach and reinforce the hull where we can." Zix glared at him suspiciously but nodded. "You heard him," he barked at the crew. "Move!" As they scrambled to prepare, Donald caught Hope's eye. In that moment, a silent understanding passed between them. Whatever their past, whatever might come in the future, right now they were in this together. The first winds of the storm began to buffet the ship, carrying with them the fine, abrasive Martian dust. Donald knew that their real test was just beginning. Survival on Mars would require all of their skills, all of their resources, and perhaps most importantly, their ability to work together despite their differences. As the storm engulfed the ship, plunging them into a red haze, Donald steeled himself for the challenges ahead. This was no longer about him, or even about the denobulans' original mission. It was about survival, pure and simple, and in the harsh, unforgiving environment of Mars, survival would be no easy task. Survival on Mars would require all of their skills, all of their resources, and perhaps most importantly, their ability to work together despite their differences. As the storm engulfed the ship, plunging them into a red haze, Donald steeled himself for the challenges ahead. The violent winds battered the damaged vessel, causing it to groan and shudder ominously. Loose panels rattled, and the faint hiss of escaping air became audible over the howling storm outside. "We need to seal off the most damaged sections," Donald shouted over the cacophony. "If we don't, we'll lose what little atmosphere we have left." Hope nodded, her silver hair whipping around her face as she turned to address her crew. "You heard him. Teams of 2, seal off any breaches you find. Move!" As the denobulan crew scrambled to comply, Donald and Hope found themselves working side by side, using emergency sealant to patch a series of small cracks that spiderwebbed across one of the viewports. The acrid smell of the sealant mixed with the metallic tang of the ship's recycled air, creating a noxious atmosphere that made Donald's head spin. "The integrity of this section is compromised," Hope said, her voice strained as she applied pressure to a particularly stubborn crack. "We need to evacuate to a more secure area." Donald glanced around, quickly assessing their options. "There," he pointed to a heavy bulkhead door a few meters away. "That looks like it leads to an internal compartment. It should be more protected from the storm." They made their way to the door, ushering the remaining crew members through before sealing it behind them. The sudden quiet was almost deafening after the chaos of the storm. Donald leaned against the wall, his chest heaving as he caught his breath. Hope activated a nearby console, her fingers dancing over the alien controls. Her expression grew increasingly grim as she read the display. "This isn't good," she said, turning to Donald. "The storm has damaged our life support systems. Oxygen levels are dropping rapidly." Donald's mind raced, calculating their options. "How long do we have?" "At current consumption rates, less than 6 hours," Hope replied, her alien eyes wide with concern. Donald ran a hand through his hair, his astronaut training kicking into overdrive. "We need to conserve oxygen. There's a technique we use in space emergencies. Low oxygen hibernation. It could buy us some time." Hope looked at him, intrigued. "Explain." As Donald outlined the procedure, he couldn't help but notice the way Hope's gaze lingered on him. The intensity of their shared experience had forged a connection between them, one that transcended their initial roles as captor and captive. "It's risky," Donald concluded, "but it might be our only option." Hope nodded, her decision made. "We'll do it. I'll inform the crew." As they prepared for the hibernation, the gravity of their situation became increasingly apparent. The compartment they had sealed themselves in was small, forcing them into close proximity. Donald found himself hyper-aware of Hope's presence, the subtle alien scent of her, the way her silver bodysuit hugged her curves. They lay down on the floor, their bodies instinctively moving closer for warmth. Donald's heart raced as Hope's arm brushed against his. Their eyes met, and in that moment, the tension between them became palpable. "Donald," Hope whispered, her voice husky, "if we don't make it through this—" He silenced her with a kiss, passionate and desperate. Their bodies intertwined, all thoughts of their differences, their past conflicts, melting away in the heat of their desire. Their encounter was both tender and urgent, a celebration of life in the face of potential death. As they lay together afterward, their breathing slowly returning to normal, Donald marveled at the turn of events. What had started as a forced mating scenario had transformed into something genuine, something profound. Their moment of peace was shattered by a sudden alarm from the console. Hope rushed to check it, her eyes widening in surprise. "It's detecting signs of a human expedition," she said, turning to Donald. "A rover approaching our position." Before Donald could respond, Commander Zix's voice crackled over the ship's intercom. "Princess, we've repaired some of the ship's systems. We're detecting life signs within the vessel. Where are you?" Hope hesitated, her gaze meeting Donald's. The complexity of their situation had just increased exponentially. They were no longer just survivors of a crash, but potential diplomats in a first contact scenario. As they contemplated their next move, Donald noticed Hope's hand move to her abdomen, a look of shock crossing her face. "Donald," she whispered, I think I'm pregnant." The revelation hung in the air between them, adding yet another layer of complexity to their already dire situation. With oxygen running low, a human expedition approaching, and now an unexpected pregnancy, Donald and Hope faced a critical decision. Stay in the relative safety of their sealed compartment or risk everything to prevent a potential interplanetary incident. The Martian dust storm continued to rage outside, but inside the ship, a storm of a different kind was brewing. As Donald and Hope weighed their options, the fate of two worlds hung in the balance, their choices in the coming hours set to shape the future of human denobulan relations for generations to come. The gravity of their situation burdened immensely on Donald and Hope as they contemplated their next move. The revelation of Hope's pregnancy added a new layer of complexity to their already dire circumstances. "We need to get out of here," Donald said, his voice low and urgent. "We can't stay trapped in this compartment, especially with your condition." Hope nodded, her hand still resting on her abdomen. "The maintenance hatch. It's our best bet." They moved towards the hatch, but as Donald gripped the handle and pulled, it refused to budge. He strained against it, muscles tensing, but the metal remained stubbornly in place. "It's jammed," he grunted, stepping back to examine the hatch more closely. "The crash must have warped the frame." Hope joined him, running her fingers along the edge of the hatch. "Perhaps we can find a tool to pry it open?" They scoured the compartment, searching for anything that might serve as a makeshift crowbar. As Donald shifted a damaged control panel, he noticed a glimmer of red light seeping through a small crack in the outer wall. "Hope, look at this," he called out, carefully widening the gap. The breach was no larger than his fist, but it offered a tantalizing glimpse of the Martian landscape beyond. Hope peered through the opening, her alien eyes widening. "It's too small for us to escape through, but maybe we can use it to signal for help." Donald's mind raced, recalling his NASA training. "If I can rig up a signaling device, we might be able to attract attention from either your crew or the human expedition." He set to work immediately, cannibalizing spare parts from the compartment's systems. Hope watched in fascination as his nimble fingers connected wires and repurposed components. As Donald worked, Hope suddenly gasped, doubling over. Her skin began to emit a soft, pulsating glow, and beads of sweat formed on her brow. "Hope, what's wrong?" Donald asked, rushing to her side. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mix of wonder and fear. "It's the pregnancy. Denobulan gestation is accelerated, but this is unprecedented." Donald helped her to a makeshift bed of discarded cushions, his concern evident. "Is there anything I can do?" Hope shook her head, her breathing labored. "Just finish the signal device. We need to get out of here soon." With renewed urgency, Donald returned to his work. Outside their sealed compartment, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. On the bridge, Commander Zix stood rigid, his eyes fixed on the display showing the approaching human rover. "Activate defensive systems," he ordered, his voice cold and authoritative. Dr. Lyra stepped forward, her face etched with concern. "Commander, we should attempt communication first. This could be our chance for peaceful—" "Silence!" Zix barked, cutting her off. "We cannot risk the safety of our princess or our mission. The humans have already proven hostile." The ship's weapons hummed to life, their energy signature immediately detected by the human expedition. On the surface, the rover came to an abrupt halt, its own defensive measures activating in response. Back in the sealed compartment, Donald had just finished his makeshift signaling device. He positioned it near the small breach, aiming the pulsing light out into the Martian atmosphere. "Now we wait," he said, turning back to Hope. His breath caught in his throat as he saw her condition had worsened. Her entire body now emitted a soft, otherworldly glow, and her facial features seemed to shift and change subtly. "Hope, hang on," Donald urged, kneeling beside her. "Help will come soon." Outside, a young denobulan engineer named Vex noticed the unusual light pattern emanating from a section of the ship's hull. Curiosity overcame his caution, and he made his way toward the source. As Vex drew closer to the sealed compartment, the human expedition launched a probe to investigate the denobulan ship. Commander Zix, perceiving this as an immediate threat, gave the order to fire. The resulting explosion rocked the ship, causing further damage to its already compromised structure. In the sealed compartment, Donald and Hope were thrown to the floor as the walls around them groaned and buckled. As the dust settled, Donald realized the blast had shifted the debris blocking their escape route. The maintenance hatch now stood slightly ajar, offering a tantalizing glimpse of freedom. "Hope, we can get out now," he said, helping her to her feet. But as they moved towards the hatch, Hope doubled over in pain, her body racked with contractions. "The baby," she gasped, her eyes wide with fear and wonder. "It's coming." Donald looked from Hope to the newly accessible hatch, then back to the signaling device still blinking its silent plea for help. They were faced with an impossible choice: risk immediate escape through the damaged ship, or wait for rescue while Hope's accelerated pregnancy raced towards its conclusion. As they grappled with their decision, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed from beyond the hatch. Someone was coming. But would it be friend or foe? And how would they react to the sight of a human and a visibly pregnant alien princess? Donald placed himself protectively in front of Hope, his heart pounding as the hatch began to slowly open. Open. Donald tensed, ready to protect Hope at all costs. The hatch swung wide, revealing a group of panicked denobulan crew members. Their eyes widened at the sight of Donald and the glowing, pregnant Hope. For a moment, time seemed to stand still as both parties stared at each other in shock. Donald's mind raced. This was their chance to prevent a disaster. He stepped forward, hands raised in a gesture of peace. "Wait," he said, his voice calm but authoritative. "We need to work together. There's a human expedition outside, and we're all in danger." The denobulans hesitated, their eyes darting between Donald and Hope. One of them, a young engineer named Vex, spoke up. "You're the human captive. How can we trust you?" Hope, despite her obvious discomfort, moved to stand beside Donald. "He speaks the truth," she said, her voice strained but regal. "Donald has proven himself an ally. We must listen to him." The crew members exchanged uncertain glances, but Hope's words carried weight. Donald seized the opportunity. "I can act as an ambassador," he explained quickly. "I can communicate with the human expedition, prevent a conflict, but we need to act fast. Your life support systems are failing, and Hope needs medical attention." As if to emphasize his point, Hope doubled over, gasping in pain. Her skin pulsed with an otherworldly light, the accelerated pregnancy taking its toll. Vex stepped forward, concern etched on his face. "The princess needs help, but how can we be sure the humans won't attack?" "Because I'll make sure they understand," Donald assured him. "I'm one of them. They'll listen to me." Before anyone could respond, the ship's alarms blared to life. A computerized voice echoed through the corridors. "Warning, life support systems critical. Oxygen levels decreasing." The situation's urgency wasn't lost on anyone. The denobulan crew members looked to each other, then back to Donald and Hope. "All right," Vex said, making a decision. "We'll try it your way, but we need to move quickly." As they began to move through the ship's damaged corridors, a commotion from behind stopped them in their tracks. Commander Zix appeared, flanked by a security detail, his face a mask of fury. "Seize the human," he barked, "and get the princess to the medical bay immediately." The security team moved to comply, but Dr. Lyra suddenly stepped between them and Donald. "Commander, wait!" she pleaded. The human has a plan. We should hear him out. Six's eyes narrowed. Dr. Lyra, step aside. This is a matter of security. It's a matter of survival, Donald interjected, standing his ground. Commander, your ship is failing. There's a human expedition outside that could either help us or destroy us. I can prevent a war, but you need to trust me. The corridor fell silent save for the blaring alarms and Hope's labored breathing. The princess, summoning her strength, stepped forward. As your princess, she declared, her voice carrying despite her condition, I hereby grant Donald diplomatic status. He speaks with my authority as an envoy of the denobulan royal family. Six's jaw dropped. Your Highness, you can't be serious. I am entirely serious, Commander, Hope cut him off, and unless you wish to commit treason by defying a direct royal command, you will stand down and allow Donald to proceed with his plan. The security team hesitated, looking to Zix for guidance. The commander's face contorted with conflicting emotions before he finally relented, signaling his men to lower their weapons. Very well, he growled, but if this goes wrong, the consequences will be on your head. With the immediate threat neutralized, Donald turned his attention to the ship's communication array. We need to contact the human expedition, he said. Is there a working comm system? Vex nodded. This way. It's damaged, but I think we can get a signal out. As they rushed to the communication hub, Hope's condition worsened. Her skin now pulsed with an intense glow, and she leaned heavily on Dr. Lyra for support. The baby, she gasped. It's coming soon. I can feel it. Dr. Lyra's eyes widened. We need to get you to the medical bay immediately. Donald looked torn, but Hope squeezed his hand. Go, she said. Make contact. Save us all. With a nod, Donald followed Vex to the comm system, while Dr. Lyra and her team rushed Hope to the medical bay. Commander Zix, still dripping with suspicion, stayed close to Donald. At the damaged console, Vex worked feverishly to establish a connection. I think I've got something, he said after a tense minute. It's weak, but it should reach the surface. Donald took a deep breath and activated the comm. This is Donald Taylor, NASA astronaut, calling the human expedition on the Martian surface. Do you copy? Static crackled, then a surprised voice responded. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Mars Expedition Team. Donald Taylor? We thought you were dead. What's your situation? Captain Chen, I'm alive and on board a denobulan ship that's crashed on the surface, Donald explained quickly. We have a critical situation here. The ship's life support is failing, and we have multiple injured crew members, including a pregnant individual in need of immediate medical attention. There was a pause before Chen replied, her voice cautious. Donald, we're detecting weapon signatures from that ship. How do we know this isn't a trap? Donald glanced at Zix, who was listening intently. I understand your concern, Captain, but I give you my word as a fellow astronaut. This is a peaceful first contact situation. The denobulans are not hostile, just scared and in need of help. I'm acting as a diplomatic envoy to prevent any misunderstandings. Another pause, longer this time. Donald held his breath, acutely aware of the ticking clock on the ship's life support in Hope's condition. Finally, Chen's voice came through again. All right, Donald, we're dispatching a medical team to your location, but be advised we'll have armed escorts as a precaution. Understood, Captain. Thank you, Donald replied, relief washing over him. We'll prepare for your arrival. As he ended the transmission, Donald turned to Zix and Vex. They're coming. We need to organize everyone and prepare to receive them, and I need to check on Hope. Zix nodded grudgingly. I'll handle the preparations. You go to the princess. Donald raced through the corridors to the medical bay, his heart pounding. He arrived to find Hope on a biobed, surrounded by Dr. Lyra and her team. The princess's entire body was now glowing, pulsing with an otherworldly energy. Donald, Hope called out, reaching for him. The baby, it's almost here. As Donald took her hand, the ship shuddered. Through a nearby viewport, he could see the human expedition's vehicles approaching through the swirling Martian dust. The moment of truth had arrived. With Hope on the verge of giving birth, the humans about to make first contact, and the ship's systems failing around them, Donald knew the next few minutes would shape the future of both their species. He squeezed Hope's hand. steeling himself for what was to come. Donald squeezed Hope's hand one last time before reluctantly letting go. "I'll be right back," he promised, his voice barely audible over the ship's blaring alarms. As he hurried towards the airlock to meet the approaching human expedition, Hope's labor intensified. Her body pulsed with an otherworldly glow, each contraction sending waves of light rippling across her skin. Dr. Lyra's face was etched with concern as she monitored the princess's vital signs. "Your Highness, the baby is coming faster than we anticipated," Dr. Lyra said, her voice strained. "We need to prepare for immediate delivery." Hope nodded weakly, her eyes fixed on the door through which Donald had just left. Will the human doctors arrive in time?" she gasped between contractions. Before Dr. Lyra could respond, the ship lurched violently. The already failing life support systems groaned in protest, and the temperature in the medical bay began to fluctuate wildly. In the corridor, Donald stumbled as the floor beneath him shuddered. He steadied himself against the wall, feeling the metal vibrate under his palm as the ship's systems struggled to maintain stability. The thought of Hope alone in the medical bay spurred him on, and he quickened his pace towards the airlock. Commander Zix was already there, his posture rigid as he watched the human expedition's vehicles approach through the swirling Martian dust. He turned to Donald, his expression a mix of suspicion and grudging respect. "The humans are here," Zix stated flatly. "I hope for all our sakes that your plan works, Taylor." Donald nodded, taking a deep breath as he prepared to face his fellow humans for the first time in months. The airlock cycled open, revealing a team of suited figures led by a woman Donald recognized as Captain Sarah Chen. "Donald Taylor," Chen said, her voice filled with a mixture of relief and caution. "It's good to see you alive. What's the situation here?" Donald quickly briefed Chen on the critical state of the denobulan ship and Hope's condition. "We need your medical team in here now," he urged. "The princess is in labor, and our systems are failing. We don't have much time." Chen hesitated for a moment, her eyes darting between Donald and the armed denobulan security detail flanking Commander Zix. Finally, she nodded. "Dr. Reynolds, gather your team and equipment. We're going in." As the human medical team rushed to prepare, Donald turned to Zix. "Commander, I know this isn't easy, but we need to let them help. It's our best chance for survival, for all of us." Zix's heart made, but he gave a curt nod. "Very well, but my security team will accompany them at all times." The human medical team, led by Dr. Sarah Chen herself, entered the denobulan ship. Their eyes widened as they took in the alien technology surrounding them. Donald guided them quickly through the corridors, explaining the situation as they went. "The ship's life support is critical," he said as they hurried along. "We're losing oxygen and temperature control. And the princess, she's not just denobulan. The baby is half human." Dr. Chen's steps faltered for a moment as she processed this information. "Half human? Donald, what exactly happened while you were here?" Before Donald could respond, they reached the medical bay. The scene inside was one of controlled chaos. Hope lay on the bio bed, her body glowing intensely as Dr. Lyra and her team worked frantically around her. Dr. Chen quickly assessed the situation and began coordinating with Dr. Lyra. The two medical teams, human and denobulan, put aside their differences and worked together seamlessly, their focus entirely on Hope and her unborn child. As the doctors worked, Donald found himself ushered to Hope's side. She gripped his hand tightly, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of fear and perseverance. "Donald," she whispered, her voice strained. "Whatever happens, thank you." Suddenly, the ship's alarms blared with renewed intensity. The temperature in the room plummeted, and Donald could see his breath misting in the air. "Life support systems critical," an automated voice announced. "Oxygen levels at 15% and falling." Dr. Chen looked up from Hope, her face grave. "We need to stabilize these systems, or we won't be able to safely deliver the baby." At that moment, a young denobulan engineer named Tix burst into the medical bay, his eyes wide with excitement despite the dire situation. "I found something," he exclaimed. "A hidden feature in the propulsion system. It could give us the power we need, but—" He trailed off, looking at the human equipment. Donald's mind raced, connecting the dots. But you need our tech to interface with it, he finished. Tix nodded eagerly. Without hesitation, Donald turned to Captain Chen. I need to go with Tix. Our equipment might be the key to saving this ship. Chen looked torn, glancing between Donald and the medical crisis unfolding before them. Finally, she nodded. Go. We'll handle things here. As Donald followed Tix out of the medical bay, he heard Hope cry out in pain. The sound tore at his heart, but he forced himself to focus on the task at hand. The lives of everyone on board depended on their success. Tix led Donald to the engineering section, explaining his discovery along the way. The denobulan ship's propulsion system had a backup power source, designed for emergencies but never before activated. With some creative adaptation of the human expedition's equipment, they might be able to bring it online. Donald's astronaut training kicked in as he examined the alien technology. Okay, he said, rolling up his sleeves. Let's get to work. As Donald and Tix raced against time to save the ship, the medical teams in the bay faced their own battle. Hope's labor had reached its peak, and the combined efforts of Dr. Lyra and Dr. Chen were being pushed to their limits. One more push, Your Highness, Dr. Lyra encouraged, her voice steady despite the sweat beading on her brow. Hope summoned her last reserves of strength, her body glowing so brightly that the medical staff had to shield their eyes. With a final monumental effort, she pushed. The medical bay fell silent for a heartbeat, then was filled with the strong, clear cry of a newborn. Dr. Chen held the child, a boy with distinct features of both human and denobulan physiology. As she placed the infant on Hope's chest, something extraordinary happened. The ship's alarm suddenly silenced, and the temperature in the room stabilized. The baby's unique biosignature seemed to be interacting with the denobulan technology, temporarily stabilizing the life support systems. In engineering, Donald and Tix looked up in surprise as the emergency lights switched off, replaced by the ship's standard illumination. Their jury-rigged solution had worked, but this sudden stabilization was something else entirely. Before they could celebrate, however, a new alarm sounded. Donald's heart sank as he realized it was coming from the medical bay. He raced back, his mind filled with fear for Hope and the newborn child. As he burst into the medical bay, he found both human and denobulan medical teams huddled around the baby. The child's skin was shifting, displaying rapid physiological changes that baffled both species doctors. Dr. Chen looked up as Donald entered, her face grave. The hybrid physiology, she said. It's unstable. We need to find a way to stabilize it, or... She didn't need to finish the sentence. Donald understood the stakes all too well. As he moved to Hope's side, taking in her exhausted but determined expression, he knew that the challenges they faced were nowhere near the end. The fragile peace between humans and denobulans, the survival of the ship, and now the life of this miraculous child, everything hung in the balance. And as the Martian night approached, bringing with it a new set of environmental challenges, Donald realized that their ordeal on the red planet was only beginning. And as the Martian night approached, bringing with it a new set of environmental challenges, Donald realized that their ordeal on the red planet was only intensifying. The medical base temperature plummeted as Mars' unforgiving night descended. Dr. Chen and Dr. Lyra huddled over the newborn, their breath visible in the frigid air. The child's skin flickered with an otherworldly glow, shifting rapidly between human and denobulan features. His vitals are destabilizing, Dr. Chen announced, her voice taut with concern. We need to find a way to balance his hybrid physiology, and fast. Dr. Lyra nodded, her antennae twitching with nervous energy. Our standard treatments are ineffective. This is unlike anything we've encountered before. Hope struggled to sit up, her face pale but determined. Let me see him, she insisted, reaching out for her child. As the medical team carefully placed the infant in Hope's arms, a remarkable change occurred. The baby's erratic transformation slowed, and his vital signs showed a slight improvement. Dr. Chen's eyes widened. The princess's touch, it's having a stabilizing effect. Donald, who had been watching from the sidelines, stepped forward. It's not just her touch, he said, a theory forming in his mind. It's the combination of denobulan and human contact. The baby needs both to achieve balance. Without hesitation, Donald placed his hand next to Hope's on the child's skin. The effect was immediate and profound. The infant's glow steadied, and his vital signs began to normalize. Dr. Chen nodded, her expression brightening with understanding. Of course, the hybrid nature requires input from both species. Donald will need biological samples from you to create a more permanent solution. As the medical team worked on preparing a transfusion system, Donald reluctantly left Hope's side to assist Tix in engineering. The ship's systems were still dangerously unstable, and they needed to find a way to interface the human expedition's equipment with denobulan technology. In the engineering bay, Tix was elbow-deep in a tangle of wires and unfamiliar components. "Taylor," he called out as Donald entered, "I think I found a way to boost our life support, but I need help with your human tech." Donald surveyed the jury-rigged setup Tix had created. It was a mess of denobulan circuitry and human power cells, held together with what looked suspiciously like duct tape. But as he examined it more closely, he realized the ingenuity behind the design. This could actually work," Donald muttered, already reaching for a nearby toolkit. "Let's do it." For the next hour, Donald and Tix worked in harmony, their hands moving in a synchronized dance of creation and adaptation. As they connected the final wire, the ship's lights flickered, then stabilized. A low hum filled the air as the life support system surged back to full power. "We did it!" Tix exclaimed, his antennae quivering with excitement. Donald allowed himself a small smile of relief, but he knew their challenges were not nearly finished. "Come on," he said, heading for the door. "We need to check on Hope and the baby." As they made their way back to the medical bay, they passed the ship's main conference room. Inside, Donald could see Commander Zix engaged in intense discussion with the human expedition leaders. Captain Chen's face was stern, her arms crossed as she listened to Zix's impassioned words. Donald paused, torn between his desire to return to Hope and his duty as a mediator between the two species. Before he could decide, Dr. Marcus Reeves, the lead scientist of the human expedition, emerged from the room. "Taylor," Reeves called out, his eyes alight with scientific curiosity. "Is it true? A human denobulan hybrid?" Donald nodded, feeling a mixture of pride and apprehension. "Yes, but the child's condition is critical. We're doing everything we can to stabilize him." Reeves' expression grew serious. "The potential for scientific discovery here is unprecedented. We need to establish a joint research base, study this phenomenon thoroughly." Before Donald could respond, an alarm blared through the ship's corridors. A voice crackled over the intercom, urgent and filled with static. "Warning, massive solar flare detected. Dangerous radiation levels imminent. All personnel prepare for emergency protocols." Donald's heart raced as he processed this new threat. The fragile peace between humans and denobulans, the life of his newborn son, and now the very survival of everyone on the Martian surface, all hung in the balance. He turned to Reeves, his mind already formulating a plan. "Doctor, we need to combine our technologies. The denobulan shields and our ground-based equipment. It might be our only chance to survive this storm." Reeves nodded, his scientific skepticism giving way to the urgency of the situation. "Agreed. I'll gather our team and equipment. We'll need full cooperation from the denobulans." As Reeves hurried off to make preparations, Donald resumed his path to the medical bay, his steps quickening with each passing moment. The challenges they faced were mounting, but so was the potential for unprecedented cooperation between their species. Entering the medical bay, Donald was greeted by an unexpected sight. Hope was sitting up, her body surrounded by a faint, pulsating aura. Her hands were pressed against a nearby console, and the ship's systems seemed to respond to her touch in ways Donald had never seen before. "Donald," Hope called out, her voice stronger than before, "I can feel the ship. It's like an extension of myself." Dr. Chen approached Donald, her voice low and filled with awe. "It seems the hybrid pregnancy has triggered some latent abilities in the princess. She's interfacing directly with denobulan technology, enhancing its efficiency beyond anything we've seen." Donald's mind raced with the implications of this development. Hope's newfound abilities could be the key to their survival against the incoming solar storm. But as he looked at his exhausted partner and their fragile newborn son, he knew that the greatest challenges, in the greatest potential for triumph, still lay ahead. The red planet's unforgiving night pressed in around them, a silent witness to the unfolding drama of two species fighting for survival and understanding in the face of cosmic peril. The red planet's unforgiving night pressed in around them, a silent witness to the unfolding drama of two species fighting for survival and understanding in the face of cosmic challenges. But the night sky, usually a canvas of stars, now pulsed with an ominous energy that set every sensor on the ship blaring. Warning, massive solar flare detected. Dangerous radiation levels imminent. All personnel prepare for emergency protocols, the ship's AI repeated, its synthetic voice a stark contrast to the rising panic in the air. Donald's gaze snapped from Hope to the viewscreen, where a menacing wall of charged particles raced towards Mars. He turned to Dr. Chen, his voice tight with urgency. We need to combine our technologies. It's our only shot at survival. Dr. Chen nodded, her face set with grit. Agreed. I'll gather our team and equipment. We'll need full cooperation from the denobulans. As the medical bay erupted into a flurry of activity, Donald found himself at the center of a whirlwind of human and denobulan cooperation. He worked side by side with Tix, their hands moving in perfect synchronization as they integrated human power cells with denobulan shield emitters. The power output is stable, Tix announced, his antennae twitching with excitement. But it's not enough. We need more. Donald's mind raced, searching for a solution. His eyes fell on Hope, still glowing faintly as she interfaced with the ship's systems. Hope, he called out, can you channel your energy into the shield? Hope's eyes met his, understanding dawning in their depths. She nodded, placing her hands on the nearest console. The ship hummed in response, systems lighting up as her energy flowed through them. Outside, a shimmering dome began to form over the crash site in the human expedition's base camp. The two groups, once divided by mistrust, now huddled together under the growing protective barrier. As the radiation intensified, electromagnetic disturbances rippled through the air, disrupting communications and causing equipment to spark and flicker. Donald gritted his teeth, fighting to keep the shield stable as the storm raged around them. In the medical bay, a soft, pulsating glow caught Dr. Chen's attention. The hybrid child, nestled in a makeshift incubator, was emitting a light that seemed to dance in time with the shield's frequencies. Donald, Dr. Chen called out, her voice filled with wonder. The baby. I think he's helping. Donald turned to see his son, the tiny form now radiating with a power that defied explanation. The shield's energy seemed to resonate with the child's glow, growing stronger with each pulse. But as the solar storm reached its peak, cracks began to appear in the energy field. Alarms blared as the shield's integrity faltered, threatening to expose them all to lethal levels of radiation. Donald's astronaut training kicked in, his mind racing through potential solutions. The ship's power core, he said suddenly, turning to Commander Zix. If we reroute it to the shield, we might be able to reinforce it. Zix's eyes widened at the implications. That would mean sacrificing our only means of leaving this planet, he said, his voice heavy with the weight of the decision. Donald met his gaze steadily. If we don't, there won't be anyone left to leave. After a moment of tense silence, Zix nodded. Do it. The next few minutes were a blur of activity as human and denobulan engineers worked frantically to modify the power core. Dr. Marcus Reeves led the human team, his expertise in xenotechnology proving invaluable as they integrated the alien systems. As the final connections were made, a surge of energy coursed through the ship. The shield flared brightly, its strength renewed. But the sudden influx of power had an unexpected effect on Hope. Her bioluminescent patches blazed with intensity, her eyes going wide as she entered a trance-like state. Through her enhanced connection with the technology, Hope began to manipulate the shield's energy patterns at a molecular level, weaving human and denobulan signatures into a more resilient barrier. The assembled team watched in awe as the shield transformed, becoming a swirling tapestry of light that pulsed with the combined strength of both species. As the solar storm reached its zenith, the reinforced shield held firm, a testament to what they could achieve together. But the victory came at a cost. As the storm began to subside, Hope collapsed, her vital signs weakening rapidly. Donald rushed to her side, cradling her in his arms as Dr. Chen and Dr. Lyra hurried to stabilize her. In a moment of desperation, Donald reached out to their child, placing one hand on Hope and the other on the infant. As their skin made contact, an extraordinary thing happened. Energy began to flow between the three of them, creating a visible circuit of bioluminescent power. Hope's eyes fluttered open, strength returning to her body as the energy coursed through her. But it was the child who underwent the most remarkable transformation. Before their astonished eyes, the infant began to grow, his form shifting and changing until he resembled a toddler rather than a newborn. As the glow faded and the family embraced, the assembled humans and denobulans looked on in wonder. The successful weathering of the solar storm and the miraculous development of the hybrid child had created a newfound sense of unity between the two groups. Even as they began to discuss plans for a joint Mars base, a new challenge loomed on the horizon. The long-range sensors picked up an incoming transmission from Earth, indicating that news of the alien encounter had reached human authorities. Donald looked out at the Martian landscape, now bathed in the light of a new day. The message from Earth promised new complications, but as he held Hope and their extraordinary child, he knew that together they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The challenges that lay ahead were daunting, but the newfound alliance between humans and denobulans offered a glimmer of hope. As the implications of the Earth transmission sank in, a palpable tension filled the air. Donald gathered the leadership of both groups in the makeshift command center, his face etched with concern. "We need to act fast," he said, his eyes scanning the room. "If we don't establish a strong, united presence here before Earth's reinforcements arrive, we risk losing everything we've accomplished." Commander Zix nodded, his antennae twitching thoughtfully. "What do you propose, Donald?" "A permanent settlement," Donald replied, his voice firm. "A joint human denobulan colony that showcases our cooperation. It'll be harder for Earth to dismantle or oppose if it's already established and thriving." Dr. Marcus Reeves leaned forward, his eyes alight with possibility. "We could repurpose parts of the denobulan ship, combine them with our expedition equipment. It's ambitious, but with our combined knowledge—" "We can do it," Princess Hope interjected, her voice still weak but determined. She pushed herself up from her bed, the faint glow around her intensifying. "I can help. My connection to the denobulan systems. I can accelerate the construction process." Donald moved to support her, concern etched on his face. "Hope, you need to rest. You've been through so much already." She smiled at him, touching his cheek gently. "This is too important, Donald. We all need to contribute." As the group dispersed to begin preparations, Donald's attention was drawn to the makeshift incubator where their child lay. To his astonishment, the infant had grown considerably in just a few hours, now resembling a toddler more than a newborn. Dr. Chen approached, her eyes wide with wonder. "It's extraordinary," she said. "The hybrid DNA seems to be stabilizing, creating a perfect blend of human and denobulan traits. The implications for genetic research are staggering." The child, whom Donald and Hope named Zephyr, blinked up at them, his eyes reflecting an intelligence far beyond his apparent age. As Donald watched, Zephyr reached out and touched a nearby console. The screen lit up, displaying complex schematics that merged human and denobulan designs seamlessly. "Incredible," Dr. Reeves breathed, studying the display. "He's integrating our technologies instinctively. This could revolutionize our construction efforts." Over the next few days, the Martian landscape became a hive of activity. Human and denobulan worked side by side, erecting structures that blended the best of both worlds. Princess Hope, despite her weakened state, used her newfound abilities to interface with denobulan systems, guiding the integration of alien tech with human ingenuity. Security Chief Laura Vance, initially skeptical of the aliens, found herself impressed by their dedication and skill. She began organizing joint training sessions, creating a unified security force capable of defending their fledgling colony. As the settlement took shape, Donald focused on diplomatic preparations. He and Hope spent hours crafting messages and strategies to present to the incoming Earth authorities. Zephyr, growing and learning at an astonishing rate, became a central part of their plan, living proof of what humans and denobulans could achieve together. Their progress was interrupted by an urgent alert from the long-range sensors. Dr. Reeves burst into the command center, his face pale. "We've detected an anomaly in Mars's orbit," he reported. "An uncharted asteroid on a collision course with the planet. If it hits, it could destroy everything we built." The room erupted into a flurry of activity as both species scrambled to address this new threat. Donald's mind raced, considering and discarding options until a daring plan took shape. "We need to combine our technologies," he announced. "Denobulan energy weapons with human propulsion systems. It's our best shot at deflecting the asteroid." Commander Zix hesitated, his antennae drooping slightly. "Our weapon systems are among our most closely guarded secrets," he said. Donald met his gaze steadily. "And our propulsion tech is equally classified. But if we don't trust each other now, we might not survive to regret it." After a tense moment, Zix nodded. "Very well. We'll share what we know." As preparations for the asteroid deflection began, Princess Hope experienced another physiological change. Her body began emitting strange energy pulses that interfered with nearby equipment. Dr. Chen ran a series of tests, her brow furrowed in concentration. "It seems to be a delayed effect of the hybrid pregnancy," she explained. "Your body is still adapting, Princess. These new emissions, they could potentially grant you abilities beyond just interfacing with technology." Donald watched as Hope experimented with her new powers, her face a mixture of wonder and dedication. Nearby, Zephyr tinkered with a complex array of human and denobulan components, his small hands moving with uncanny precision. The colony buzzed with nervous energy as they raced against time. The asteroid loomed ever closer, Earth's reinforcements were on their way, and the future of human-denobulan relations hung in the balance. Donald knew that their actions in the coming days would shape not just their own fate, but potentially the future of both species in the solar system. As he looked out over the Martian landscape, now dotted with the fruits of their cooperation, Donald felt a mix of pride and apprehension. The challenges ahead were immense, but so was the potential for triumph. With Hope and Zephyr by his side, and the combined strength of humans and denobulans supporting them, he dared to hope that they might just pull off the impossible. The Martian sun began to set, casting long shadows across the red planet's surface. In the fading light, the joint human-denobulan settlement stood as a beacon of collaboration and innovation. As night fell, the real work was just beginning. The settlement buzzed with activity as the joint human-denobulan team raced against time to implement their asteroid deflection plan. Donald wiped sweat from his brow as he examined the intricate web of wires and conduits connecting the denobulan energy weapons to the human propulsion systems. The hybrid technology before him represented the best of both worlds, a testament to what they could achieve together. "How's it looking?" Dr. Reeves asked, his voice strained with fatigue and worry. "We're close," Donald replied, making a final adjustment. "But we'll need to test it before—" A sudden surge of energy coursed through the room, causing lights to flicker and screens to scramble. Princess Hope stumbled into the chamber, her body emitting pulses of strange, ethereal light. "Hope!" Donald rushed to her side, supporting her as she swayed on her feet. Dr. Chen hurried over, scanner in hand. "The emissions are intensifying," she reported, brow furrowed. "It's affecting all our systems." As if on cue, alarms blared throughout the settlement. Security Chief Laura Vance's voice crackled over the intercom. "We're experiencing widespread equipment malfunctions. All non-essential personnel, please report to designated safe zones." Donald looked at Hope, concern etched on his face. "We need to get you to the medical bay." She shook her head, commitment blazing in her eyes despite her weakened state. "No, I need to be here. I can help." Before Donald could protest, a small figure darted into the room. Zephyr, now resembling a 5-year-old child, moved with purpose towards the malfunctioning equipment. As he approached, the erratic energy emissions seemed to stabilize, screens flickering back to life. Extraordinary, Dr. Reeves breathed, watching as Zephyr's small hands danced over the controls, bringing systems back online with intuitive ease. Commander Zix entered, his antennae twitching with a mix of concern and excitement. Donald, we need to talk. I believe we can use these developments to our advantage. As the denobulan leader outlined his proposal to incorporate Hope and Zephyr's abilities into the deflection plan, Donald felt a knot form in his stomach. The thought of putting his family in danger warred with the knowledge that their unique capabilities might be their only chance of success. I don't like it, Donald said, his voice low. But you're right. We don't have a choice. The next hours were a blur of activity as they fine-tuned their strategy. Hope practiced focusing her energy emissions, while Zephyr worked on extending his stabilizing influence over larger areas. Donald threw himself into preparations for piloting the delivery craft, running simulation after simulation. As the asteroid loomed ever closer, a new complication arose. Long-range sensors detected the approach of the Earth expedition, a fleet larger and more heavily armed than they had anticipated. Laura Vance's voice cut through the tension. They've entered Mars orbit. They're demanding explanations and they don't sound happy about the alien presence. Donald shared a look with Commander Zix. We need to buy time. Laura, can you keep them talking? She nodded grimly. I'll do my best, but you better hurry with that asteroid. With a final check of his equipment, Donald prepared to launch. He embraced Hope tightly, then knelt to look Zephyr in the eyes. I need you both to be strong, he said, his voice thick with emotion. What we're about to do, it's bigger than all of us. Hope squeezed his hand. We'll be right here with you, every step of the way. As Donald's craft soared towards the asteroid, Hope and Zephyr took their positions in the heart of the deflection control center. The massive rock loomed in the view screen, its irregular surface a maze of craters and jagged peaks. Approaching optimal firing position, Donald's voice crackled over the comm. But this turbulence is making it tricky to... His words cut off as the craft jolted violently. Hope gasped, her hand instinctively reaching out toward the screen. As she did, a surge of energy pulsed through the control center. Zephyr placed his small hand on her arm, and suddenly the maelstrom of power steadied. Connection stabilized, Dr. Chen reported, her eyes wide with wonder. Hope, Zephyr, whatever you're doing, keep it up. Donald's voice came through again, stronger now. I'm in position, activating the deflection device. Now! A brilliant beam of energy erupted from the craft, engulfing the asteroid in a dazzling display of light. Hope channeled her power into the beam, her entire body glowing with the effort. Zephyr stood beside her, his presence a calming anchor in the storm of energy. For a moment it seemed as though their efforts would be in vain. The asteroid continued its ominous approach, unyielding in the face of their combined power. Then, almost imperceptibly at first, it began to shift. It's working, Dr. Reeves shouted, his eyes fixed on the trajectory calculations. The asteroid's changing course. A cheer went up from the control center, but their celebration was short-lived. Warning alarms blared as the deflection device began to overload, threatening to tear itself apart. Donald, get out of there, Commander Zix ordered, his antennae rigid with tension. But Donald's voice, when it came through, was calm. Negative. If I leave now, we lose our only shot at this. Hope's eyes widened in fear, her connection to Donald allowing her to feel the danger he was in. Without thinking, she reached out, channeling her energy directly towards him. Zephyr, sensing her intent, amplified the connection, creating a three-way link between them. The control center faded away as Hope found herself connected to Donald and Zephyr in a way that defied explanation. Energy flowed between them, stabilizing the deflection device and pushing the asteroid further off course. In that moment of connection, Hope felt Donald's tenacity, Zephyr's unwavering support, and her own power growing beyond anything she had imagined possible. The asteroid, once an unstoppable force of destruction, now seemed small and insignificant in the face of their united strength. As the immediate danger passed and the asteroid's new trajectory took it safely away from Mars, the connection slowly faded. Hope found herself back in the control center, supported by Zephyr as she swayed on her feet. Donald's voice, tired but triumphant, came through the comm. Deflection successful. I'm coming home. The sense of relief was palpable, but it was short-lived. Laura Vance's urgent message cut through the celebratory atmosphere. The Earth expedition is demanding immediate access to the settlement. They want answers, and they want them now. Donald, Hope, and Zephyr shared a look of willpower. They had faced down an asteroid and won, but now they faced a challenge of a different kind. The future of human-denobulan relations hung in the balance, and they knew that their next moves would shape the destiny of both species in the solar system. As Donald's craft began its approach to the settlement, the team braced themselves for the diplomatic storm that was about to break. The asteroid may have been deflected, but their greatest test was just beginning. The immediate threat of the asteroid had been averted, but a new challenge loomed on the horizon. Donald's craft touched down on the Martian surface, and he emerged to find the settlement in a state of controlled chaos. Security personnel rushed to and fro, setting up defensive positions and securing sensitive areas. "What's the situation?" Donald asked, striding into the command center, where Hope and Zephyr waited anxiously. Laura Vance's face was grim as she reported, "The Earth expedition is demanding immediate access to the settlement. They're not taking no for an answer." Commander Zix's antennae twitched with concern. "We must tread carefully. This could either cement our alliance or destroy everything we've built." Donald nodded, his mind racing. "We need a plan. Hope, Zix, let's talk strategy." The three of them huddled together, speaking in hushed tones as they formulated a response. After several tense minutes of debate, they reached a consensus. "We'll allow a small delegation to enter," Donald announced to the room. "Under strict supervision, of course. It's our best chance to show them what we've accomplished here." Hope squeezed his hand. "It's risky, but I agree. They need to see the benefits of our cooperation firsthand." As the settlement prepared for the Earth delegation's arrival, Donald couldn't help but feel a sense of déjà vu. Once again, the fate of their colony hung in the balance. The airlock cycled, and a group of 5 humans in pristine uniforms stepped into the settlement. At their head was a woman with steel-gray hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed to take in every detail at once. "Admiral Catherine Winters," she introduced herself, her voice crisp and authoritative. "I trust you understand the gravity of this situation." Donald nodded, extending his hand. "Donald Chen, colony leader. We're prepared to give you a full tour and answer any questions you might have." Admiral Winters' eyes narrowed as she took in the alien architecture seamlessly blended with human design. "I should hope so. The presence of an extraterrestrial species on Mars is not something Earth takes lightly." As they began the tour, Donald could sense the Admiral's skepticism. Her questions were pointed, probing for weaknesses or hidden agendas. Yet as they progressed through the settlement, showcasing the advanced technology and efficient operations, he noticed a subtle shift in her demeanor. "Your power generation capabilities are impressive," Admiral Winters admitted, studying a holographic display of the colony's energy grid. Before Donald could respond, the lights flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. Emergency backups kicked in moments later, bathing the room in a dim red glow. "What's happening?" one of the Earth delegates demanded, his hand instinctively moving to his sidearm. Dr. Reeves' voice crackled over the intercom. "Massive solar flare detected. It's interfering with our systems." Donald turned to Hope and Zephyr. "Looks like we'll have to show them what we can really do," he said with a grim smile. Hope nodded, her body already beginning to emit a soft glow. Zephyr, now resembling a young child, took her hand. Admiral Winters watched with a mixture of fascination and wariness as the family approached the main power distribution node. Hope placed her free hand on the console, channeling energy into the system. Zephyr closed his eyes in concentration, his presence seeming to stabilize the erratic power fluctuations. Donald's fingers flew over the controls, rerouting power and bringing systems back online. Within minutes, the lights blazed back to full intensity and the hum of machinery filled the air. "Systems restored," Donald announced, turning to face the stunned Earth delegation. "Any other questions?" Admiral Winters' expression was unreadable, but there was a new glint of respect in her eyes. "I think," she said slowly, We have a lot to discuss. As they made their way to the conference room for further talks, Donald caught sight of Dr. Chen hurrying towards them, her face alight with excitement. "Donald, Hope, we've made a breakthrough," she exclaimed, barely containing her enthusiasm. "It's about Hope's physiology. You're not going to believe this." The revelation of Hope's accelerated adaptation to the Martian environment sent ripples of excitement and concern through both the colonists and the Earth delegation. As discussions heated up about the potential for scientific exchange, Donald could sense the conflicting emotions among Admiral Winter's team. Their debate was cut short by a blaring alarm. Laura Vance's voice rang out over the intercom, urgency evident in her tone. "Massive dust storm approaching from the northern pole. All personnel, prepare for emergency protocols." Donald shared a look with Hope and Zephyr. They had faced down an asteroid, navigated tense diplomatic waters, and now nature itself was testing their purpose. As the colony mobilized to face this new threat, Donald knew that the true measure of their human denobulan alliance was about to be put to the ultimate test. As the colony mobilized to face this new threat, Donald knew that the true measure of their human denobulan alliance was about to be put to the ultimate test. The dust storm descended upon the settlement with terrifying speed, engulfing buildings and equipment in a swirling maelstrom of red particles. Visibility dropped to near zero as the howling winds battered against the colony's protective dome. "Energy shield at maximum output," Laura Vance shouted over the din of alarms and rushing personnel. "But it's not going to be enough." Donald watched as Princess Hope and Zephyr took their positions at the shield generator, their bodies glowing with ethereal energy. The shield flickered and pulsed in us, straining against the relentless assault of the storm. "We need more power," Donald muttered, his mind racing. Suddenly an idea struck him. Dangerous, but potentially their only option. He turned to Dr. Chen, who was monitoring the energy readings with growing concern. "The power core," Donald said, his voice tight with urgency. "If I interface directly with it, I might be able to channel additional energy to the shield." Dr. Chen's eyes widened. "Donald, that's incredibly risky. The amount of energy could, We don't have a choice," Donald cut her off, already moving towards the core chamber. "Prep the neural interface, now." As Donald entered the chamber, he could feel the raw energy crackling in the air. Technicians scrambled to attach a series of cables and electrodes to his body, connecting him to the pulsing heart of the colony's power system. "Neural interface online," Dr. Chen's voice came through his earpiece. "Donald, are you sure about this?" He gritted his teeth. "Do it." The moment the connection was established, Donald's world exploded into blinding light and searing pain. Every nerve in his body felt like it was on fire as the massive energy flow coursed through him. He could feel the shield strengthening, but the strain on his body was immense. Through the haze of pain, Donald became aware of a familiar presence. Princess Hope had left her position at the shield generator and was now standing before him, her eyes glowing with commitment. "Hope, no!" Donald gasped. "It's too dangerous." But the denobulan princess ignored his protest. She reached out, placing her hands on either side of Donald's face. In an instant, an energy link formed between them, and Donald felt the burden of channeling the power lessen as Hope took on part of the load. Their connection deepened, transcending the physical. Donald could sense Hope's thoughts, her emotions, the very essence of her being. Together, they poured their combined strength into the shield, pushing it to new heights of power and stability. Across the colony, Zephyr, now resembling a 9-year-old child, stood alone at the shield generator. His small form trembled with effort as he processed and directed the massive energy flow from his parents. The hybrid child's unique physiology allowed him to handle the task with remarkable efficiency, his body adapting in real time to the extraordinary demands placed upon it. Outside, Admiral Winters and Commander Zix led a joint team of humans and denobulans in a desperate effort to reinforce vulnerable areas of the settlement. The two leaders shouted orders over the howling wind, their previous tensions forgotten in the face of their shared crisis. "We need to seal off the eastern quadrant," Winters yelled, pointing to a section of the dome where the storm's assault was most fierce. "Your people's force field technology might help." Zix nodded, his antennae quivering in the charged atmosphere. Agreed. We'll combine it with your reinforced polymer sheets. The layered approach should hold. As the two crews worked feverishly to implement this impromptu solution, Dr. Chen and Dr. Lyra huddled over a console in the main lab, their faces illuminated by the glow of rapidly changing data streams. Are you seeing this? Dr. Lyra asked, her voice hushed with awe. The cellular changes in Donald, Hope, and Zephyr. They're accelerating exponentially. Dr. Chen nodded, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she analyzed the incoming data. It's as if the energy exchange is catalyzing a rapid evolutionary process. Their bodies are adapting to withstand the Martian environment at an unprecedented rate. Just as it seemed the colony might weather the storm, a new alarm blared through the settlement. The atmospheric processors, overtaxed by the extreme conditions, began to fail one by one. Oxygen levels plummeted, and both humans and denobulans gasped for breath. In the power core chamber, Donald and Hope's shared consciousness registered the new threat. Their silent communication was instant and decisive. They redoubled their efforts, pushing even more energy through their linked bodies despite the increasing agony. Zephyr, sensing the colony's desperate need, closed his eyes in intense concentration. Suddenly, a shimmering field of energy began to emanate from his small form. The air within this field seemed to shimmer and purify, spreading outward to encompass more and more of the settlement. Admiral Winters, struggling to breathe, watched in amazement as the air around her cleared. She turned to Commander Zix, who looked equally astonished. "What is happening?" Winters asked, her voice hoarse. Zix's antennae twitched rapidly. "It appears the child is regenerating our atmosphere. Fascinating." As the dust storm finally began to subside, the true extent of what had transpired became clear. Donald, Hope, and Zephyr emerged from their respective positions, their bodies visibly altered. Faint bioluminescent patterns danced across their skin, and their movements displayed a newfound grace and strength. The Earth delegation stared in a mixture of awe and unease as the hybrid family stood before them, living proof of a new species born from the crucible of Mars. Admiral Winters stepped forward, her expression a complex mix of emotions. "I think," she said slowly, "we have much to discuss about the future of this colony and the implications of what we've witnessed here today." Before anyone could respond, a sharp beep cut through the tense atmosphere. Laura Vance's voice came over the intercom, tight with awe-inspiring urgency. "Donald, we're picking up a long-range transmission. It's from the denobulan homeworld. A rescue fleet is on its way to Mars." The room fell silent as the implications of this news sank in. Donald, Hope, and Zephyr exchanged glances, knowing that their newfound abilities and hybrid status would soon be at the center of a potentially explosive interplanetary situation. As the colony braced itself for the arrival of the denobulan fleet and the complex negotiations that would follow, one thing was clear. The future of human denobulan relations and the fate of Mars itself hung in the balance. Balance. As the colony braced itself for the arrival of the denobulan fleet and the complex negotiations that would follow, Donald knew they needed to act quickly. "We need to prepare," Donald said, turning to Admiral Winters and Commander Zix. "Our unique abilities could be crucial in navigating this situation." Admiral Winters nodded, her expression grave. "Agreed. You and your family will play a key role in the upcoming negotiations." Over the next few days, Donald and Hope began intensive training to control and enhance their new abilities. They spent hours in a specially designed facility, pushing the limits of their hybrid physiology. The room hummed with energy as they practiced channeling and manipulating the power that now coursed through their bodies. During one session, Donald reached out to Hope, forming an energy link between them. The connection was instant and intense, far more potent than before. He gasped as he felt her presence in his mind, her thoughts and emotions intertwining with his own. This is incredible," Hope whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. Their training sessions grew increasingly intimate as they explored the depths of their new connection. The energy exchanges led to passionate encounters, their bodies glowing with bioluminescent patterns as they came together. Meanwhile, Zephyr's growth continued at an astonishing rate. In a matter of days, he appeared to have aged several years, now resembling a 12-year-old boy. His mind developed just as rapidly, absorbing knowledge at an unprecedented pace. Dr. Chen marveled at Zephyr's progress as he effortlessly navigated complex denobulan and human computer systems. His hybrid biology is allowing him to process and retain information in ways we've never seen before, she explained to Donald and Hope. As the date of the denobulan fleet's arrival drew near, a new development caught everyone off guard. Laura Vance's voice crackled over the intercom, urgency evident in her tone. Donald, we've detected an unidentified object entering the Martian atmosphere. It's on a collision course with the surface, not far from the colony. Donald sprang into action, assembling a team to investigate. Hope and Zephyr insisted on joining him, their new abilities potentially crucial for the mission. As they approached the crash site in a rover, Donald's heart raced with anticipation. The object now visible was clearly of denobulan origin, a probe ancient in design but remarkably well preserved. It's incredible, Hope breathed, her eyes wide as they exited the rover and approached the crashed probe. This technology, it's far older than anything I've seen from my people. Zephyr moved closer to the probe, his young face scrunched in concentration. There's something inside, he said, placing his hand on the probe's surface. I can sense it. A life form. Donald and Hope exchanged shocked glances. A life form? After all this time? Donald asked incredulously. Working quickly, they managed to open the probe. Inside, they found a stasis pod containing a denobulan male, perfectly preserved. We need to get him back to the colony immediately, Donald said, his mind racing with the implications of this discovery. Back at the settlement, Dr. Chen and Dr. Lyra worked tirelessly to safely revive the denobulan from stasis. Hours passed as the colony waited with suspenseful pause. Finally, Dr. Chen emerged from the medical bay, her face a mixture of exhaustion and excitement. He's awake, she announced. His name is Zar, and he has quite a story to tell. Zar's revival sent shockwaves through the colony. The ancient denobulan, once he overcame his initial shock at finding himself on Mars, surrounded by humans and his own people working together, began to share his knowledge. Our civilization established a network of outposts throughout this solar system centuries ago, Zar explained, his voice filled with wonder at how much time had passed. It was part of a long-term exploration project, one that was clearly forgotten over time. Admiral Winters leaned forward, her eyes sharp with interest. These outposts, what kind of technology do they contain? Before Zar could respond, Donald felt a strange tingling sensation course through his body. He glanced at Hope and saw that she was experiencing the same thing. Without a word, they both approached the ancient probe that had been brought back to the colony. As they touched its surface, Donald and Hope gasped in unison. Images flooded their minds. Schematics, coordinates, activation codes. They could see the network of denobulan outposts spread across the solar system, hidden and dormant, waiting to be awakened. We can access them, Donald said, his voice filled with awe. Our hybrid physiology, it allows us to interface with this ancient technology in a way that neither humans nor denobulans can alone. The implications of this revelation were staggering. Admiral Winters immediately saw the potential military applications, while Commander Zix urged caution, fearing the reaction of the incoming denobulan fleet. As tensions mounted, Donald, Hope, and Zephyr proposed a daring plan. The probe contains a dormant communication array, Zephyr explained, his young voice filled with confidence beyond his apparent years. If we can activate it, we might be able to contact the denobulan fleet before they arrive. It's risky, Donald added, but it might be our best chance to avoid a diplomatic crisis. With time running short, preparations for the activation began. Donald, Hope, and Zephyr positioned themselves around the ancient probe, their bodies already beginning to glow with energy. Are you ready? Donald asked, looking at his family. Hope nodded, her eyes shining with persistence. Zephyr gave a thumbs up, a gesture he'd picked up from the human colonists. As they began to channel their energy into the probe, the air around them crackled with power. Donald felt the connection with Hope and Zephyr deepen, their minds merging in a way that was both exhilarating and terrifying. The probe hummed to life, its ancient systems awakening after centuries of dormancy. As the communication array powered up, Donald suddenly became aware of a much larger energy field surrounding them. "The planet," he gasped, struggling to maintain his focus. "It's reacting to the array." Mars's electromagnetic field began to fluctuate wildly, causing alarms to blare throughout the colony. Systems flickered and failed as the planet itself seemed to respond to the ancient denobulan technology. Donald, Hope, and Zephyr fought to maintain control, their bodies transforming as they channeled the immense energies coursing through them. Their skin shimmered with bioluminescent patterns, their features shifting and changing as their hybrid physiology adapted in real time. As the communication array reached full power, a beam of energy shot from the probe into the Martian sky. Donald, Hope, and Zephyr stood at the center of this maelstrom, their merged consciousness reaching out into space, searching for the incoming denobulan fleet. In that moment, balanced on the knife edge between success and catastrophe, the fate of human denobulan relations, and perhaps the future of the entire solar system, hung in the balance. Balance. As the energy coursing through their bodies intensified, Donald, Hope, and Zephyr felt themselves changing. Donald's skin took on a subtle, shimmering quality, seeming to deflect the harsh Martian radiation. Hope's bioluminescent patterns grew more pronounced, pulsating in rhythm with the array's energy output. Zephyr, now appearing to be in his mid-teens, marveled as holographic interfaces sprouted from his fingertips. "Focus," Donald urged, his voice strained as he channeled more power into the array. "We need to maintain control." The effort to activate the communication array triggered an unexpected chain reaction across the Martian landscape. Dormant geothermal vents burst to life, releasing pockets of trapped gases and sending tremors rippling through the planet's crust. Inside the colony, alarms blared as the ground shook. Admiral Winters turned to Commander Zix, her face etched with concern. "We need to reinforce the settlement structures. Divert all available resources immediately." As human and denobulan teams scrambled to shore up the colony's defenses, Donald, Hope, and Zephyr pushed their abilities to the limit. Suddenly, a faint signal pierced through the electromagnetic interference. "We've made contact," Hope exclaimed, her eyes wide with excitement. But the connection was fragile, constantly threatening to slip away. Donald's mind raced, drawing on his years of experience as an astronaut and his newly enhanced cognitive abilities. "We need to boost the signal," he said, already formulating a plan. "A network of relay stations around the settlement could amplify our transmission." Admiral Winters nodded, quickly grasping the concept. "We'll need every available hand to make this work. Commander Zix, let's mobilize our teams." As the colony sprang into action, Zar approached Donald, his ancient eyes filled with a mixture of wonder and concern. "There's more you should know about the outposts," he said, his voice low. "They were part of a vast network, designed not just for exploration, but for terraforming." This revelation sent shockwaves through the colony's leadership. Dr. Chen turned to Admiral Winters, her expression grave. "The ethical implications of accessing such technology are staggering. We need to proceed with extreme caution." As the debate raged, Donald, Hope, and Zephyr focused on their task. With the relay stations in place, the signal to the denobulan fleet strengthened. Hope began transmitting a comprehensive data package, explaining the situation on Mars in detail. Laura Vance watched the proceedings with growing unease. "Admiral," she said, pulling Winters aside, "sharing information about the hybrid family and the ancient technology could compromise Earth's position. We need to be careful about how much we reveal." As tensions within the colony rose, Donald and Hope made a startling discovery. Their enhanced senses detected faint energy signatures emanating from deep beneath the Martian surface. These matched the frequency of the ancient denobulan technology, Hope whispered, her antenna twitching with excitement. Zephyr's fingers danced through the air, manipulating holographic displays to map out the subterranean network. The scale of the hidden complex was staggering, spanning a significant portion of the planet's crust. Before they could fully process this discovery, a response from the denobulan fleet arrived. The message was clear. While they had received the transmission, they harbored deep concerns about human involvement in denobulan affairs. Donald turned to Hope and Zephyr, his expression determined. "We need to access that hidden complex before the fleet arrives. It's our best chance to prove the benefits of collaboration." As they prepared for the expedition, Donald and Hope found themselves drawn to each other with increasing frequency. Their shared experiences had forged a bond deeper than either had anticipated. During a rare moment of privacy, they came together, their hybrid physiologies resonating in ways that blurred the lines between physical and energy-based intimacy. The expedition team assembled quickly, a mix of human and denobulan experts ready to plunge into the unknown depths of Mars. As they made final preparations, a technician burst into the room, her face pale. "Long-range sensors have detected a massive solar flare heading straight for Mars," she reported. "It's unlike anything we've ever seen." Donald looked at Hope and Zephyr, then at the assembled team. "We're out of time," he said. "We need to move now. Whatever secrets that complex holds, they might be our only hope of surviving what's coming." As they boarded the transport that would take them to the entrance of the hidden complex, Donald couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the precipice of something monumental. The fate of two species, the future of Mars, and the survival of his unique family all hung in the balance as they prepared to delve into the heart of the red planet. The transport hummed to life, its engines straining against the Martian gravity. As they lifted off, the colony grew smaller behind them, a fragile outpost of life on an alien world. Ahead lay the unknown, buried beneath millennia of Martian dust and rock. Donald tightened his grip on Hope's hand as they accelerated towards their destination, and towards a future none of them could have imagined. As the transport descended into the hidden entrance of the Martian complex, Donald felt a surge of anticipation mixed with trepidation. The craft touched down with a soft thud, kicking up a cloud of rust-colored dust. Donald, Hope, and Zephyr were the first to exit, their enhanced senses already probing the ancient structure before them. "The air, it's different here," Hope whispered, her antenna twitching slightly. "There's a faint energy signature permeating everything." Donald nodded, feeling the same subtle vibration through his newly sensitized skin. "Let's proceed carefully. We don't know what kind of security systems might still be active." As they led the expedition team into the complex, the walls seemed to come alive around them. Faint lines of bioluminescence traced intricate patterns along the corridors, responding to their presence. Zephyr, now appearing to be in his mid-teens, ran his fingers along one of the walls. Holographic interfaces sprang to life at his touch, displaying information in an ancient denobulan script. "It's like the entire complex is one giant computer," he said, his voice filled with awe, "and somehow I can read it." The team made their way deeper into the labyrinth of tunnels, with Donald and Hope using their heightened reflexes to guide them past potential hazards. Suddenly, they emerged into a vast chamber that took their breath away. The central control room was a marvel of alien architecture. Crystalline panels lined the walls, pulsing with a soft, inner light. As Donald and Hope approached, the panels flared to life, responding to their hybrid physiology. Holographic displays flickered into existence, filling the air with shimmering data. Maps of the solar system appeared, overlaid with intricate plans for massive engineering projects. "Terraforming," Dr. Chen gasped, her eyes wide as she took in the information. They were planning to reshape entire worlds. While the human and denobulan members of the team marveled at the displays, Zephyr had already interfaced directly with the main console. His eyes glazed over, filled with scrolling data as he accessed the complex memory banks. "There's so much here," he said, his voice distant. "Propulsion systems that could reach the outer planets in days, energy generation methods that could power entire continents, environmental manipulation techniques that could turn barren rocks into garden worlds." As the team delved deeper into the complex, they encountered their first real challenge. A section of corridor ahead suddenly lit up with crisscrossing beams of energy, an ancient security system springing to life. Donald's enhanced reflexes kicked in, allowing him to duck and weave through the deadly grid. On the other side, he found a control panel and deactivated the system, allowing the others to pass safely. "That was too close," Laura Vance said, her face pale. "We need to be more careful." Their caution was well-founded. As they entered a new chamber, a series of automated defense drones activated, their weapons trained on the intruders. Hope stepped forward, her hands glowing with accumulated energy. With a series of precise blasts, she disabled the drones before they could fire a single shot. "Impressive," Commander Zix said, nodding appreciatively. "Your hybrid abilities may be the key to navigating this place safely." As they pressed on, Donald couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The complex seemed to be studying them, adapting to their presence. Their next discovery left them all speechless. A vast chamber opened up before them, filled with row upon row of stasis pods. Each pod contained a denobulan, perfectly preserved and seemingly untouched by the passage of time. "There must be thousands of them," Dr. Lyra whispered, her voice a mixture of awe and concern. As Donald and Hope approached one of the pods for a closer look, their proximity triggered something. Lights on the pod began to flash, and a revival sequence initiated. "We need to stop it," Laura shouted, but it was too late. The pod hissed open, revealing a female denobulan. Her eyes fluttered open, focusing on the strange group before her. "I am Lyra," she said, her voice weak from centuries of disuse. "What year is it?" Before anyone could answer, alarms began to blare throughout the complex. More pods were activating, the revival sequence spreading like a wave through the chamber. "We need to contain this," Donald said, his mind racing. "If all these denobulans wake up at once, we'll be overwhelmed." As the team scrambled to respond to the unfolding crisis, Zephyr made another discovery. "There's an energy core," he said, his fingers dancing through holographic interfaces. "It's massive, powerful enough to run this entire complex and then some." Donald and Hope exchanged a look, recognizing the potential solution to their colony's energy crisis. But activating such a powerful alien technology carried its own risks. "We need to make a decision," Hope said, her eyes meeting Donald's. "Do we focus on containing the revival of these ancient denobulans, or do we attempt to harness this energy core to save our colony from the approaching solar flare?" As they weighed their options, Donald felt a new connection forming between himself and Hope. Thoughts and emotions flowed between them with startling clarity, their hybrid physiology evolving to allow a form of telepathic communication. The intimacy of this new bond added another layer of complexity to their decision. Their choices now would not only affect the future of Mars and human denobulan relations, but would also shape their own relationship and the future of their unique family. Zephyr, now looking like a young adult, took charge of coordinating the expedition team. His understanding of both cultures proved invaluable as he mediated discussions between the human members, the colony denobulans, and the newly awakened Lyra. As they debated their next move, a transmission from the surface cut through their deliberations. Admiral Winter's voice crackled over the comm system, tense with urgency. "The denobulan fleet has increased speed," she reported. "They'll be here within hours. Whatever you're going to do down there, you need to do it fast." Donald looked around at his team, at the ancient denobulans beginning to stir in their pods, and at the pulsing energy core that promised both salvation and potential disaster. The next few hours would determine the fate of everything they had worked for. With a deep breath, he prepared to make the hardest decision of his life, knowing that the consequences would ripple across two civilizations and change the future of Mars forever. Donald's decision crystallized in an instant. "We need to activate the energy core, Ma," he said, his voice firm. "It's our best chance to save the colony from the solar flare." Hope nodded, her antenna quivering with nervous energy. "Agreed, but we need to be careful. We don't know what other systems it might trigger." As they approached the pulsing heart of the complex, alarms blared overhead. The revival of the ancient denobulans was spreading rapidly through the stasis chamber. Zephyr's fingers danced across holographic interfaces, his youthful face set in concentration. "I think I can isolate the energy core's activation sequence from the rest of the systems," he said. "It should minimize unexpected consequences." Donald placed his hand on a crystalline panel, feeling the alien technology respond to his hybrid physiology. Hope joined him, their fingers intertwining as they interfaced with the ancient systems. A surge of power coursed through them, and the energy core roared to life. The complex hummed with renewed vigor, lights flickering on in long dark corridors. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shuddered. "What's happening?" Laura Vance shouted, stumbling to maintain her balance. Before anyone could respond, Admiral Winter's voice crackled over the comm system, distorted by interference. "The solar flare. Shields failing. Losing contact." The transmission cut out abruptly, leaving the expedition team in tense silence. "We need to get to the surface," Donald said, already moving towards the exit. As they rushed through the waking complex, they felt a change in the air. It grew thicker, warmer, charged with an unfamiliar energy. Emerging from the hidden entrance, they were met with an astonishing sight. A shimmering dome of energy extended from the complex, encompassing a vast swath of the Martian landscape. Within its boundaries, the barren red soil was already showing signs of change. "Impossible," Dr. Chen whispered, her scientific mind struggling to process what she was seeing. Patches of green began to sprout from the once lifeless ground. The thin Martian atmosphere visibly thickened within the dome, swirling with newfound moisture. Hope's antenna twitched rapidly. "The energy field, it's not just protecting us from the solar flare, it's terraforming Mars." As they watched in awe, the transformation accelerated. Small pools of liquid water formed in depressions, fed by melting subsurface ice. The rusty sky took on a bluish tinge, clouds forming for the first time in millions of years. Commander Zix approached Donald, his expression a mix of wonder and concern. "This is beyond anything we could have imagined. The implications..." He was cut off by a transmission from the colony. Admiral Winter's face appeared on their portable communicators, her features taut with tension. "What have you done down there?" she demanded. "We're detecting massive environmental changes across a significant portion of the planet's surface." Donald tried to explain, but the Admiral cut him off. "We have another problem. The denobulan fleet has increased speed dramatically. They'll be here within hours, and they're not responding to our hails." The gravity of the situation settled over the group. They had inadvertently triggered a transformation that could reshape the future of Mars and potentially the entire solar system. Lyra, the awakened denobulan, approached Donald and Hope. "I think I understand what's happening," she said, her voice still weak from centuries of stasis. "This facility was designed as a terraforming station, meant to gradually transform Mars over thousands of years. You've activated all systems simultaneously, compressing that timeline into hours." The implications of her words were staggering. Donald looked at Hope, seeing his own mix of excitement and apprehension mirrored in her eyes. "We need to secure key locations around the terraform zone," Admiral Winters ordered through the comm. "We can't risk losing control of this technology or the transformed territory." Commander Zix tensed at her words. "And what of my people?" he asked, his loyalties clearly torn. Before anyone could respond, Zephyr interrupted. "Something's happening with the ancient denobulans," he said, his eyes unfocused as he interfaced with the complex's systems. "They're waking up faster than we anticipated. Hundreds are already conscious." Donald felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Every decision they made now would have far-reaching consequences for both humans and denobulans. As the situation grew more complex, he found himself drawn to Hope. Their eyes met, and a current of understanding passed between them. Without a word, they moved closer, their hybrid physiologies resonating in harmony. The moment their hands touched, a surge of energy pulsed through them. The terraforming effect intensified, spreading beyond the initial dome. The Martian landscape began to transform at an even more rapid pace. "Donald! Hope!" Zephyr called out, his voice urgent. "Your connection, it's interfacing with the complex systems. The terraforming is accelerating." They broke apart, startled by the unintended consequences of their intimate moment. The air around them crackled with energy, and they could feel the planet changing beneath their feet. Admiral Winter's voice came through once more, filled with a mix of awe and alarm. "The atmospheric changes are spreading across the entire planet. Earth is demanding answers. What do I tell them? As Donald struggled to formulate a response, a new alert sounded. The denobulan fleet had entered Mars orbit, their ships clearly visible in the rapidly clearing sky. A transmission cut through the chaos, the face of a stern denobulan appearing on their screens. This is General Vex of the denobulan rescue fleet. We demand an immediate explanation for the transformation of Mars. Prepare for our arrival. Donald looked at Hope and Zephyr, then at the mixed team of humans and denobulans around them. The next few hours would determine the fate of Mars and test the limits of their newfound abilities. As the denobulan ships began their descent, Donald steeled himself for the challenges ahead, knowing that the future of two civilizations now rested in their hands. The approaching denobulan fleet loomed large in their minds as they considered their next move. We need to act fast, Donald said, his voice tight with urgency. If we don't manage this situation carefully, we could be looking at an interspecies conflict. Hope nodded, her antenna quivering with nervous energy. I have an idea. We could use the complex's communication systems to broadcast a message to both the fleet and Earth. Explain what's happening here. Donald's eyes lit up. That's brilliant. If we can get everyone on the same page, maybe we can avoid a confrontation. As they made their way to the communication hub, alarms blared throughout the facility. The revival of the ancient denobulans was accelerating, adding another layer of complexity to an already volatile situation. Zephyr's fingers flew across holographic interfaces, his young face creased with concentration. I've located the primary communication array. It's powerful, but it'll need a boost to reach Earth and the denobulan fleet simultaneously. Hope stepped forward, her hybrid physiology humming with energy. I can help with that. My connection to the denobulan systems might amplify the signal. As Donald and Hope worked in tandem to craft their message and boost the signal, their proximity sparked an unexpected reaction. Energy crackled between them, their hybrid bodies resonating in harmony. The complex responded to their combined presence, systems lighting up that had lain dormant for millennia. Suddenly, a hidden door slid open nearby, revealing a chamber they hadn't noticed before. Inside, row upon row of sleek, alien devices lined the walls. What are those? Laura asked, peering into the room. Commander Zix's eyes widened in recognition. Denobulan weapons and defense systems. Advanced ones by the look of it. The discovery sent a ripple of tension through the group. Admiral Winter's voice crackled over the comm system, her tone sharp with interest. Secure that cache immediately. We may need those defenses if the situation escalates. Commander Zix bristled at the order. With all due respect, Admiral, seizing those weapons could be seen as an act of aggression by my people. It could provoke the very conflict we're trying to avoid. As the argument intensified, Zephyr stepped in, his voice calm but firm. We need to focus on diplomacy, not military advantages. I've arranged a meeting between Lyra and key members of our colony. Her knowledge could be crucial in diffusing this situation. In a nearby chamber, Lyra addressed the assembled group, her voice growing stronger as she spoke. This facility wasn't just meant for terraforming. It was a fail-safe, a backup plan in case disaster struck our homeworld. Her words hung heavy in the air, the implications clear to both humans and denobulans present. This complex could be the key to solving resource scarcities and environmental challenges faced by both species. Outside, the Martian landscape continued its rapid transformation. New lakes formed in low-lying areas, fed by melting subsurface ice. In the distance, a plume of ash and steam marked the awakening of a long-dormant volcano. Donald and Hope found themselves drawn to a control interface, their hybrid physiologies allowing them to interact with the ancient systems in ways the others couldn't. As they worked to stabilize the terraforming process, they discovered they could exert some control over it, though their efforts were often met with unexpected results. A tremor shook the complex, nearly knocking them off their feet. The geological changes are becoming more severe, Dr. Chen reported, her eyes fixed on a screen displaying seismic data. We need to find a way to slow this down, or we risk destabilizing the entire region. Before they could formulate a plan, a new alert sounded. General Vex's face appeared on a nearby screen, his expression stern. We have waited long enough for explanations. A reconnaissance team is being deployed to your location. Prepare for their arrival. As the denobulan shuttles began their descent, hidden defense systems within the complex whirred to life. Energy beams lanced out, targeting the incoming craft. "No!" Donald shouted, racing to deactivate the automated defenses. Hope joined him, their hands flying over alien controls as they struggled to understand the ancient technology. The situation spiraled further out of control as Admiral Winters, watching the chaos unfold from orbit, made a fateful decision. All available units moved to secure the complex and surrounding area. We cannot allow this technology to fall into potentially hostile hands. As human forces began to deploy, Zephyr knew he had to act. Interfacing with the complex's systems, he prepared to broadcast a message that could be their last hope for peace. His voice, amplified and broadcast to all parties involved, rang out with clarity and conviction. "Humans, denobulans, please listen. What's happening here on Mars is bigger than any one species. We have a chance to work together, to create something amazing. Look at me, at my family. We're living proof that our peoples can coexist, can create something beautiful together." As Zephyr's impassioned plea echoed across the red planet and beyond, Donald and Hope continued their frantic efforts to stabilize the terraforming process and deactivate the defense systems. The next few moments would determine not just the fate of Mars, but the future of human-denobulan relations in the solar system. The complex hummed with energy, ancient systems awakening to a new era. Outside, the Martian sky continued to change, hints of blue peeking through the rusty haze. In orbit, the denobulan fleet held position, their next move uncertain. On the surface, human and denobulan forces stood on the precipice of conflict, waiting to see which way the scales would tip. On the surface, human and denobulan forces stood on the precipice of conflict, waiting to see which way the scales would tilt. Zephyr's words echoed across the Martian landscape, resonating with both humans and denobulans alike. The young hybrid's impassioned plea for unity and cooperation struck a chord, momentarily halting the escalating tensions. General Vex, his stern expression softening slightly, raised a hand to signal his fleet to stand down. Perhaps we have been too hasty," he said, his voice carrying a hint of uncertainty. "This situation is unprecedented. It deserves careful consideration." Admiral Winters, her face tight with concern, nodded in agreement. "Agreed. We need to understand what's happening here before we take any irreversible actions." As the immediate threat of conflict dissipated, a tense ceasefire settled over the red planet. General Vex, along with a small delegation of denobulan officials, agreed to meet with Admiral Winters and Commander Zix on the Martian surface. The location chosen for this crucial summit was a newly formed oasis within the terraform zone, a lush pocket of vegetation that had sprung up in the wake of the environmental changes. While the leaders convened, Donald and Princess Hope redoubled their efforts to stabilize the rapidly evolving Martian ecosystem. Their unique hybrid physiology allowed them to interface directly with the ancient denobulan systems, making real-time adjustments to the terraforming process. As they worked, their bodies emitted a soft, pulsating glow. Energy crackled between them, their movements perfectly synchronized as they manipulated holographic displays and alien control interfaces. Sweat beaded on their brows as they fought to prevent catastrophic geological events from tearing the planet apart. "There!" Donald exclaimed, his fingers dancing across a shimmering control panel. "I've managed to divert a magma flow that was threatening to breach the surface near the meeting site." Hope nodded, her antenna quivering with concentration. "Good work. I'm reinforcing the atmospheric shield to prevent rapid pressure changes. We can't risk a sudden decompression event." Hours passed as they worked tirelessly, their bodies pushed to the limit. The strain of maintaining control over the planet's transformation began to take its toll. Exhaustion set in, their movements becoming sluggish and uncoordinated. "We need to rest," Hope said, her voice barely above a whisper. "If we push ourselves any further, we risk making a mistake." Donald nodded, his eyes heavy with fatigue. "You're right. Let's find somewhere to recover our strength." Hand in hand, they made their way to a secluded chamber deep within the underground complex. The small room hummed with ancient technology, its walls lined with pulsing bioluminescent panels. As the door sealed behind them, a sense of intimacy enveloped the couple. In the confined space, their bodies still thrumming with residual energy from their connection to the Martian systems, Donald and Hope found themselves drawn together. Their eyes met, a current of unspoken desire passing between them. Without a word, they came together in a passionate embrace. As their intimacy deepened, the energy within them surged. The bioluminescent panels flared brightly, responding to the intense emotions and physical connection between the hybrid couple. Unbeknownst to them, their union triggered a massive surge in the terraforming process. Miles above, on the planet's surface, the ground began to tremble. Fissures opened in the rusty soil, releasing torrents of water from underground reservoirs. The newly formed lakes and streams swelled rapidly, converging and spreading across the Martian landscape. At the negotiation site, the talks between human and denobulan leaders were interrupted by the sudden geological activity. General Vex rose to his feet, his face a mask of suspicion and anger. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, gesturing at the rapidly forming body of water visible on the horizon. "Is this some kind of human trick?" Admiral Winters, equally shocked by the sudden change, shook her head. "I assure you, we had no knowledge of this. Something must have triggered an acceleration in the terraforming process." As accusations flew back and forth, the fragile peace threatened to shatter. Both sides began to prepare for potential conflict, their earlier progress toward understanding seemingly forgotten in the face of this new development. Zephyr, watching the situation deteriorate, knew he had to act quickly. Interfacing with the complex's systems, he activated a dormant holographic projection technology. With a few deft commands, he initiated a planet-wide broadcast. The skies above Mars lit up with a massive holographic display, showing real-time images of the planet's transformation. The newly formed ocean spread across the surface, while pockets of vegetation burst into life. At the center of it all, the broadcast showed Donald and Princess Hope, their bodies glowing as they worked tirelessly to stabilize the rapidly changing environment. As human and denobulan leaders watched in awe, the true scale of the transformation became apparent. The hybrid family's crucial role in managing the terraforming process was undeniable, forcing both sides to reconsider their positions. In the secluded chamber, Donald and Hope slowly emerged from their intimate encounter, unaware of the chaos their actions had inadvertently caused. As they prepared to return to their duties, they felt a profound change in their connection to the Martian environment. Hope gasped, her eyes wide with wonder. "Donald, can you feel that? It's like I can sense the planet itself." Donald nodded, equally amazed. "I feel it too. It's as if Mars has become an extension of our own bodies." As they stepped out of the chamber, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, they were immediately confronted with the consequences of their actions. Reports flooded in about the newly formed Martian ocean and the rapid spread of vegetation across the planet's surface. The hybrid couple exchanged a look of persistence, their bodies still faintly glowing from their recent connection. With their deepened awareness of the Martian ecosystem, they knew they held the key to guiding the planet's transformation. But as they prepared to return to the control center, they couldn't shake the feeling that their actions had set in motion events that would forever change the future of Mars and the relationship between humans and denobulans. The red planet, once barren and lifeless, now pulsed with new energy and potential. As night fell on the transformed Martian landscape, Donald and Princess Hope stood at the edge of the newly formed ocean, the weight of their responsibility settling upon them. The challenges ahead were immense, but together they were ready to face whatever the future might bring. As the first rays of Martian sunlight crept over the horizon, Donald and Princess Hope stirred from their rest. The events of the previous day had left them exhausted, but as they awoke, they immediately sensed something was different. Donald blinked, his vision sharper and more vibrant than ever before. "Hope, look at your skin," he whispered, awe evident in his voice. Hope glanced down at her arms, gasping softly as she noticed the subtle, iridescent sheen that now covered her body. Her skin seemed to shift and change, reflecting the colors of their surroundings like a living prism. "You too," she breathed, reaching out to touch Donald's face. As their eyes met, both realized they could perceive a spectrum of colors they had never seen before. The world around them had transformed overnight, revealing hidden depths and nuances in every surface. Before they could fully process these changes, an alarm blared through the complex. Donald's communicator crackled to life, the voice of a human engineer filtering through. "Donald, we need you at the lower levels immediately. The water from Hope Sea is rising faster than we anticipated. We're at risk of flooding." Donald and Hope exchanged a determined look. "We're on our way," Donald responded, already moving towards the door. As they raced through the corridors, their enhanced physiology became evident. They moved with a grace and speed that surpassed their previous capabilities, effortlessly navigating the twisting passageways of the ancient facility. Reaching the lower levels, they found a team of human and denobulan engineers working frantically to reinforce the structural supports and implement emergency water management systems. Donald immediately took charge, his mind processing the complex engineering challenges with newfound clarity. "We need to divert the water flow here and here," he said, pointing to a holographic display of the facility. "Hope, can you use your connection to the planet to slow the water's advance?" Hope nodded, closing her eyes and reaching out with her mind. She could feel the pulse of the newly formed ocean, its rhythms now as familiar to her as her own heartbeat. With a gentle mental push, she urged the waters to recede, buying the engineers precious time. As Donald worked with the team to implement his plan, Dr. Chen's voice came over the intercom. "Donald, Hope, we need you in the biolab as soon as possible. We've made some extraordinary discoveries about the new hybrid ecosystems." Hours later, with the immediate flooding threat contained, Donald and Hope made their way to the research facility. They found Dr. Chen and Dr. Lyra hunched over a series of complex holographic displays, their faces a mix of excitement and concern. "Look at this," Dr. Chen said, gesturing to a 3D model of a plant-like organism. "These new hybrid life forms are sequestering carbon at rates we've never seen before. And over here," she pointed to another display, "we have organisms producing oxygen faster than anything on Earth." Dr. Lyra nodded, her antenna twitching with excitement. "The potential for accelerating atmospheric stabilization is enormous, but," she added, her tone growing serious, "we're also seeing rapid mutations and adaptations. We're not sure how these new species will interact with the existing ecosystem in the long term." As they discussed the implications of these findings, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. The tremors quickly intensified, rattling equipment and sending loose objects crashing to the floor. "Mars quake!" Dr. Chen shouted, diving under a nearby table. The others followed suit, bracing themselves as the violent shaking continued. Suddenly, a deafening crack echoed through the complex, followed by the sound of collapsing stone and twisting metal. As the quake subsided, emergency alarms blared throughout the facility. "The East Wing has collapsed," a panicked voice announced over the intercom. "We have multiple personnel trapped, including several scientists." Without hesitation, Donald and Hope sprang into action. They raced towards the disaster area, their enhanced strength and agility allowing them to navigate the treacherous, partially flooded tunnels with ease. As they approached the collapse site, Donald suddenly heard Hope's voice in his mind. "We can go faster if we split up. I'll take the left passage. You take the right." Startled by this new form of communication, Donald nonetheless nodded in agreement. They separated, moving in perfect synchronization despite the physical distance between them. Hope reached the trapped scientist first, her enhanced strength allowing her to lift a fallen support beam that had pinned Dr. Chen and Lyra. As she helped them to safety, Donald arrived from the other side, clearing a path for the remaining survivors. With the last of the trapped personnel rescued, Donald and Hope turned their attention to securing the area. As they worked to stabilize the damaged section, a sudden shift in the rubble revealed a hidden chamber. Curious, they cautiously entered the newly exposed room. At its center stood a massive pulsating crystal, its surface etched with intricate alien designs. As Donald and Hope approached, their bodies began to glow in response, resonating with the crystal's energy. The moment their hands touched the crystal's surface, a surge of power coursed through them. Their bodies lit up like beacons, casting the chamber in a brilliant, multicolored light. Unbeknownst to them, this interaction sent a signal pulsing through space, awakening dormant systems across the solar system. As the glow faded, Donald and Hope stood in awe of what they had discovered. They knew instinctively that this crystal was the key to understanding the ancient denobulan technology, and perhaps the key to their own evolving abilities. Before they could fully process this revelation, Zephyr's voice crackled over their communicators. "Donald, Hope, we need you in the command center immediately. Something's happening on Venus, Europa, and Titan, and we're receiving a transmission, in alien language I've never encountered before." Exchanging a look of grit, Donald and Hope left the crystal chamber, sealing it behind them. As they made their way to the command center, they could feel the weight of their newfound responsibility settling upon them. The future of Mars, and perhaps the entire solar system, now rested in their hands. As they rushed to the command center, the complex shuddered with another tremor, sending loose debris clattering to the floor. Bursting through the doors, Donald and Hope found the room in a state of controlled chaos. Zephyr's holographic form flickered as he processed vast streams of data, while Admiral Winters and General Vex huddled around a central display, their faces etched with concern. "Report," Donald commanded, his voice carrying a new note of authority. Zephyr's image solidified. "The crystal you activated has triggered a chain reaction across the solar system. We're detecting massive energy surges on Venus, Europa, and Titan. And that's not all." Before he could finish, alarms blared throughout the facility. A technician's voice crackled over the intercom. "Hope C is rising at an unprecedented rate. We're looking at complete inundation of the lower levels within hours." Donald and Hope exchanged a glance, their bodies still humming with energy from their encounter with the crystal. They knew, without speaking, that their actions had inadvertently accelerated the terraforming process. "We need to evacuate," Admiral Winters declared, her voice cutting through the noise. "Now!" General Vex nodded in agreement, his antennae twitching with agitation. "I'll coordinate with my people. We'll need to move quickly." As the leadership mobilized for evacuation, Donald took charge of the relocation efforts. His enhanced mind processed logistics at an astonishing speed, coordinating teams and prioritizing equipment with ruthless efficiency. "Hope," he called out, "we need to buy time. Can you slow the water's advance?" Princess Hope nodded, her iridescent skin shimmering as she focused her newfound abilities. Closing her eyes, she reached out with her mind, feeling the pulse of the expanding ocean. With a mental push, she urged the water to recede, creating a temporary barrier against the flood. Outside, the Martian landscape transformed before their eyes. Vegetation erupted from the soil, growing at an accelerated rate. Hope directed this growth, forming a living wall to further slow the advancing waters. As the evacuation progressed, tensions rose. A group of newly awakened ancient denobulans, led by a charismatic figure named Zorn, seized control of a section of the underground complex. They activated long-dormant defense systems, isolating themselves from the rest of the colony. Zorn's voice boomed through the facility's communication systems. "Mars belongs to the denobulan people. We will reclaim what is rightfully ours." This declaration sent shockwaves through the colony. Dr. Lyra and her followers immediately denounced Zorn's actions, pledging their support to the joint human-denobulan effort. The fragile alliance, already strained by the environmental crisis, now teetered on the brink of collapse. Amidst the chaos, Zephyr's decoding efforts bore fruit. "The alien transmission," he announced, his holographic form pulsing with excitement. "It contains coordinates for a rendezvous point in the outer solar system, and a warning. There's a threat coming, something that endangers all life in our region of space." Admiral Winters and General Vex exchanged grim looks. The stakes had just risen exponentially. They quickly agreed to assemble a joint expedition to the provided coordinates, with Donald and Princess Hope at its head. As preparations for this critical mission began, a new crisis emerged. Colony systems began malfunctioning in bizarre ways. Screens flickered with alien symbols, doors opened and closed on their own, and environmental controls went haywire. Dr. Chen, her lab coat singed from a recent equipment fire, burst into the command center. "The hybrid microorganisms," she gasped out of breath. "They're infiltrating our technology, creating some kind of biomechanical interface. It's unlike anything we've ever seen." Donald and Hope, their bodies still evolving, discovered they could communicate with these hybrid organisms. Working with Dr. Chen and Dr. Lyra, they began developing methods to control the spread of this biomechanical integration. As they worked, Zorn's faction launched a series of raids on the surface colony. They struck with precision, stealing advanced technology and attempting to seize control of key terraforming nodes. Donald and Hope found themselves torn between defending the colony, stabilizing the environment, and preparing for their crucial deep space mission. The conflict escalated when Zorn's group activated a hidden weapon system within the ancient complex. A beam of intense energy shot into space, its purpose unknown. The activation triggered a chain reaction throughout the denobulan outpost network, further accelerating the terraforming processes across the solar system. Reports flooded in of rapid environmental changes on Venus, Europa, and Titan. The future of the entire solar system now hung in the balance, with Mars as the fulcrum. Donald and Hope pushed their abilities to the limit, fighting to maintain stability on Mars while racing against time to prepare for their mission. Each time they connected, their powers grew stronger, unlocking new aspects of their evolving physiology. As Zorn's forces threatened to overrun the main colony, Donald and Hope made a daring decision. They would use their connection to the terraforming energies to trigger a controlled environmental shift, hoping to neutralize Zorn's advantage and create an opportunity for diplomacy. Standing at the edge of Hope's sea, their bodies glowing with power, Donald and Hope joined hands. They reached out with their minds, tapping into the very essence of Mars itself. The ground trembled beneath their feet as they channeled the planet's energy, shaping it to their will. Massive stone pillars erupted from the sea, forming a natural barrier around the colony. The air shimmered as they adjusted atmospheric composition, creating localized weather patterns that disrupted Zorn's attacks. Hybrid plant life responded to their call, rapidly growing to form a protective canopy over vulnerable areas. As the dust settled from their audacious display of power, Donald and Hope surveyed the transformed landscape. They had bought time and demonstrated the full extent of their commitment to preserving the alliance between humans and denobulans. With the immediate threat contained, they turned their attention to the looming deep space mission. As they boarded the ship that would carry them to the mysterious rendezvous point, Donald and Hope knew that the fate of Mars, the solar system, and possibly all of humanity and denobulan civilization rested on their shoulders. The ship's engines roared to life, lifting them off the Martian surface. As they ascended through the atmosphere, Hope gazed out at the transformed planet below. "Whatever we find out there," she said softly, "we'll face it together." Donald nodded, his eyes fixed on the starfield ahead. "Together," he agreed as the ship accelerated towards the unknown depths of space, the solar system. As they cleared Mars's atmosphere, Donald's communicator chimed urgently. Admiral Winter's voice crackled through, tense and hurried. "Donald, Hope, we need you back on the surface immediately. The terraforming process has triggered an unforeseen complication." Donald and Hope exchanged worried glances. Without hesitation, Donald swung the ship around, initiating a rapid descent back to the Martian surface. As they approached the colony, they saw chaos unfolding below. Vast swathes of the newly formed Martian landscape were covered in a strange, shimmering film. Colonists in hazmat suits scrambled across the terrain, setting up containment barriers and taking samples. The moment they touched down, Dr. Chen rushed to meet them, her face pale with concern. "It's ancient microbial life," she explained breathlessly. "The terraforming process has awakened organisms dormant for millions of years. They're spreading rapidly, threatening everything we've built." Donald and Hope wasted no time. They moved swiftly across the transformed Martian surface, using their enhanced abilities to create controlled zones. Hope reached out with her mind, manipulating the environment to form natural barriers, while Donald used his heightened intellect to coordinate the colony's response teams. As they worked tirelessly to contain the microbial threat, Donald and Hope noticed something unexpected. Each time they touched, a surge of energy pulsed through them and into the surrounding environment. Plants sprouted and grew at an accelerated rate, and weather patterns shifted in response to their proximity. Hope, Donald said, his eyes wide with realization. Our connection, it's directly influencing the terraforming process. They began to strategically time and locate their moments of physical contact, using their hybrid physiology to counteract the spread of the ancient microbes and stabilize the volatile Martian ecosystems. Meanwhile, in the colony's command center, Zephyr's holographic form flickered with excitement. "I've made a breakthrough in decoding the alien transmission," he announced to Admiral Winters and General Vex. "The impending threat, it's connected to this microbial outbreak on Mars." The news added a new layer of urgency to their mission. As Donald and Hope returned from their latest containment effort, they were met by a grim-faced Admiral Winters. "We have another situation," she said, leading them to a secure briefing room. "A group led by Dr. Marcus Reeves has gone rogue. They're deliberately exposing themselves to the ancient microbes, claiming it's the key to human evolution on Mars." Donald's teeth clenched. "We'll investigate immediately." Infiltrating Dr. Reeves's makeshift lab proved challenging, even with their enhanced abilities. What they found inside left them stunned. Reeves and his followers had undergone startling transformations, their bodies forming symbiotic relationships with the Martian microbes. "This is the future of humanity on Mars," Reeves proclaimed, his eyes gleaming with an unnatural light. "We're adapting, evolving to thrive in this new world." As Donald and Hope retreated to report their findings, the colony erupted into heated debate. Some viewed Reeves' group as pioneers, while others feared the loss of their humanity. Amidst the growing tensions, Zorn's separatist faction launched a series of coordinated attacks on the colony's infrastructure. Donald and Hope found themselves stretched to their limits, battling both the microbial threat and Zorn's forces while trying to maintain order. During a fierce skirmish near a critical terraforming node, Donald was exposed to a high concentration of the ancient microbes. His hybrid physiology reacted violently, his body convulsing as it underwent rapid, alarming changes. Hope, her heart racing with fear, pulled Donald into a secluded area. "I have an idea," she said, her voice trembling. "Our connection, maybe it can stabilize you." She pressed her body against his, initiating an intimate encounter. As they came together, a massive wave of energy surged through them and out into the Martian environment. The ground shook, and the sky above them shimmered with auroral lights. When it was over, Donald's condition had stabilized, but the world around them had changed dramatically. Vast forests had sprung up overnight, and the atmosphere had thickened to near-Earth levels in a matter of hours. As they emerged from their shelter, they found a radically transformed Mars. The colony leaders called for an emergency summit to address the rapidly evolving situation, with Donald and Hope asked to mediate between the various factions. Just as the summit was about to begin, long-range sensors blared a warning. A fleet of unknown vessels had entered the solar system, heading directly for Mars. Donald and Hope shared a look of relentless drive. Their mission beyond the solar system had just become more critical than ever. With the fate of Mars hanging in the balance and an unknown alien force approaching, they knew that the greatest challenges still lay ahead. The looming threat galvanized the colony into action. Admiral Winters' voice cut through the chaos, issuing rapid-fire orders to prepare for potential conflict. Donald and Hope exchanged a determined glance. They knew their deep space mission had just become exponentially more urgent. Without a word, they sprinted towards the newly constructed hybrid vessel, christened Nexus. The ship was a marvel of biomechanical engineering, its sleek hull pulsing with an otherworldly energy. As they approached, a carefully selected team of human and denobulan specialists fell into step behind them, each chosen for their unique skills and adaptability. Dr. Chen, her lab coat still singed from earlier chaos, rushed up to them. "The Nexus is ready," she said, her eyes bright with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. But the power core, it needs something more. Donald nodded, understanding immediately. He turned to Hope, their eyes meeting in silent communication. They both knew what needed to be done. Inside the ship's core chamber, Donald and Hope stood before a pulsing, crystalline structure. They reached for each other, their bodies glowing with an inner light. As their hands touched, energy crackled between them, arcing into the core. The ship came alive around them, systems powering up with a deep, resonant hum. Outside, the Martian sky erupted in a dazzling display of auroral lights, visible even from orbit. Alarms blared throughout the colony. The alien fleet, Zephyr's holographic form, flickered into existence. "They've altered course. They're heading straight for us." Donald and Hope raced to the bridge, their bodies still crackling with residual energy. As they took their positions, interfacing directly with the ship's biomechanical controls, chaos erupted in the launch bay. Dr. Marcus Reeves and his group of microbe-enhanced colonists stormed the facility, their bodies twisted into strange alien forms. "We are the future of Mars," Reeves shouted, his voice distorted and inhuman. "We should be the ones to make first contact." Donald gritted his teeth, focusing his mind on the environmental systems around the launch bay. With a thought, he caused the very air to thicken, slowing Reeves and his followers. Hope joined her power with his, and together they manipulated the gravity field, gently but firmly pinning the attackers in place. "Launch now!" Admiral Winter's voice crackled over the comms. "We'll handle things here." The Nexus surged upward, breaking free from Mars' gravity well with unnatural speed. As they cleared the atmosphere, the vastness of space opened before them, and with it, the imposing sight of the alien fleet. Massive bioorganic ships filled the viewport, their surfaces writhing with what looked like living tissue. Energy tendrils lashed out from the lead vessel, reaching for the Nexus with terrifying speed. "Evasive maneuvers!" Donald shouted, his mind melding with the ship's systems. Hope's consciousness joined his, their combined will guiding the Nexus through a series of impossible twists and turns. But the alien ships were relentless, their energy tendrils closing in. In a moment of desperate inspiration, Donald and Hope reached deeper into the ship's systems than ever before. They felt a surge of power unlike anything they had experienced, and suddenly, space itself seemed to twist around them. A localized wormhole burst into existence directly ahead of the Nexus. Without hesitation, Donald guided the ship into the swirling vortex of energy. The alien tendrils grasped at empty space as the Nexus vanished from sight. Moments later, they emerged in the outer reaches of the solar system. The crew gasped in collective awe at the sight before them. A massive space station of clearly alien design orbited a distant dwarf planet, its architecture unlike anything humanity or the denobulans had ever encountered. As they approached, the station seemed to come alive. Lights flickered across its surface, and a beam of energy swept over the Nexus. "It's scanning us," Dr. Chen reported, her fingers flying over the sensor readings. "Wait, it's focusing on Donald and Hope." The scan intensified, and Donald felt a strange resonance within his body. Beside him, Hope shivered, clearly experiencing the same sensation. Suddenly, a massive docking port irised open on the side of the station. "It's inviting us in," Hope whispered, her voice filled with wonder and trepidation. Donald nodded, guiding the Nexus towards the opening. As they passed through the airlock, the true scale of the station became apparent. Vast corridors stretched in every direction, their walls lined with incomprehensible technology. No sooner had they set foot inside than an ancient defense system sprang to life. Holographic barriers flickered into existence, and ominous-looking weapons emerged from hidden compartments. Acting on instinct, Donald and Hope reached out with their minds, interfacing with the station's systems as they had with the Nexus. The defenses wavered, then slowly powered down, granting the crew access to the heart of the station. As they made their way deeper into the structure, Donald couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the precipice of a discovery that would change everything. The fate of Mars, Earth, and perhaps the entire galaxy hung in the balance. Whatever secrets this ancient station held, he knew they had to uncover them quickly. The central core loomed before them, a massive chamber pulsing with energy. As Donald and Hope approached, holographic displays sprang to life, filling the air with cascading streams of alien data. The greatest challenge of their lives was about to begin, and the clock was ticking. Ticking. The ancient station hummed with untapped potential, its secrets waiting to be unlocked. Donald stepped forward, his hybrid physiology resonating with the alien technology. As he interfaced with the station's systems, a holographic display materialized before him, revealing the true nature of their discovery. "It's a weapon," he breathed, his eyes widening as he absorbed the complex schematics. "A weapon designed to combat the very threat we're facing." Dr. Chen rushed to his side, her fingers flying over the alien controls. "The power requirements are astronomical," she reported. "We need to find a way to activate it." Donald nodded, his mind racing. He reached out with his consciousness, probing deeper into the station's core. Suddenly, he felt a surge of resistance, as if the weapon itself was pushing back against his efforts. "There's something missing," he growled, frustration evident in his voice. "The weapon's core requires a specific energy signature. It's not responding to me alone." As Donald struggled with the ancient technology, the situation on Mars grew increasingly dire. Princess Hope stood atop the colony's main defensive wall, her body glowing with an otherworldly energy as she projected massive force fields to shield key installations from the relentless Harvester assault. Sweat beaded on her brow as she strained to maintain the protective barriers. The constant barrage of Harvester weapons fire sent shockwaves through her defenses, each impact reverberating through her body. Admiral Winter's voice crackled over the comm system. "We can't hold out much longer, Princess. We need a breakthrough." Hope gritted her teeth, pushing her abilities to their limit. "I'm doing everything I can," she responded, her voice strained, "but I don't know how much longer I can keep this up." As if in answer to her plea, a familiar figure approached, flanked by a group of strange, twisted forms that were once human colonists. "Dr. Reeves?" Hope gasped, momentarily losing focus and causing one of her barriers to flicker. The scientist's body had undergone a startling transformation, his skin mottled with patches of an alien, bark-like substance. His eyes gleamed with an unnatural light as he spoke. "We can help," Reeves said, his voice carrying an otherworldly timbre. "Our enhanced physiology allows us to bypass the Harvester sensors. We can infiltrate their ships and disable them from within." Hope hesitated, torn between desperation and distrust. Finally, she nodded. "Do it, but be careful." As Reeves and his group of microbe-enhanced colonists slipped away toward the grounded Harvester ships, Hope redoubled her efforts, channeling every ounce of her strength into the protective barriers. Back on the space station, Donald had reached an impasse. The weapon's core remained stubbornly inactive, resistant to his every attempt at activation. Frustration mounted as he realized the cruel irony of their situation. They had found the very tool they needed to save Mars, but lacked the means to use it. Suddenly, an idea struck him. He turned to the crew, his eyes alight with renewed perseverance. "I need to establish a connection with Hope," he announced. "Our combined hybrid energy signatures might be enough to jumpstart this thing." The crew sprang into action, jury-rigging a complex array of alien and human technology. As the makeshift system powered up, Donald closed his eyes, reaching out across the vast expanse of space with his mind. On Mars, Hope felt a sudden jolt, as if an electric current had passed through her body. Her eyes widened as she sensed Donald's presence, his consciousness brushing against hers across the impossible distance. "Donald," she whispered, her voice filled with a mixture of relief and wonder. As their energies synchronized, both Donald and Hope began to change. Donald's skin took on a metallic sheen, his nervous system merging with the station's circuitry. On Mars, Hope's body began to mirror these changes, her form shifting and adapting to channel the immense energy flowing between them. The space station thrummed with power, long dormant systems flickering to life. On the bridge, the crew watched in awe as the ancient weapon began to activate, its energy signature building to unprecedented levels. Aboard the Harvester ships, alarms blared as their sensors detected the growing threat. The massive extraction vessels broke off their assault on the Martian colony, turning their attention to the distant space station that now posed a greater danger to their plans. Donald's eyes snapped open, glowing with an inner light. "They're coming," he announced, his voice resonating with the station systems. "We need to bring the fight to them." As the space station began to move under its own power, making its way towards Mars, the final battle for the fate of two worlds began to unfold. The ancient weapon, powered by the combined hybrid energies of Donald and Hope, stood as humanity's last line of defense against the Harvester threat. But even as hope began to rise, questions lingered. Could Donald and Hope maintain their connection across the vast distances of space? Would the ancient weapon prove effective against the advanced Harvester technology? And what further changes would their evolving hybrid physiologies undergo in the crucible of this epic confrontation? The answers to these questions would determine not just the fate of Mars, but the future of humanity itself. The ancient station's energy signature pulsed with increasing intensity as Donald guided it towards Mars. The crew of the Nexus watched in awe as the massive structure maneuvered with surprising agility, closing the distance to the embattled red planet. As they entered Mars' orbit, Donald felt his connection to Hope strengthen. Arcs of bioelectric energy crackled between the station and the Martian surface, creating a dazzling light show that illuminated the planet's atmosphere. "The energy link is stabilizing," Dr. Chen reported, her eyes wide as she monitored the readings. "It's disrupting the Harvester ship's systems." Admiral Winter's voice crackled over the comm system. "We're detecting fluctuations in the alien vessels. Now's our chance. All fighters launch and engage." From hidden bases across the Martian landscape, human and denobulan fighters erupted into the sky. The experimental weapons mounted on their hulls glowed with an eerie light, powered by the hybrid microorganisms developed in the colony's labs. Donald watched through the station's sensors as the fighters swarmed the disoriented Harvester ships. Beams of energy lanced out, slicing through the alien vessel's defenses with surprising effectiveness. Several smaller craft tumbled from the sky, their systems completely disabled. On the surface, Hope led a team of colonists towards a fallen installation. Her body glowed with an otherworldly light, pulsing in time with the energy arcing from the station above. As they approached the Harvester-controlled facility, Hope reached out with her mind, tapping into the planet itself. The Martian soil erupted around them, twisted vines and sturdy flora springing to life in seconds. These rapidly growing plants formed a protective barrier around Hope's team, deflecting energy blasts from the defending Harvesters. "Keep moving," Hope shouted, her voice strained with effort. Her skin had taken on a luminescent quality, each pulse of energy causing ripples of light to cascade across her body. Aboard the ancient station, Donald's integration with the systems deepened. He felt his body changing, adapting to better interface with the alien technology. His limbs elongated, fingers splitting into multiple tendrils that meshed seamlessly with the control surfaces. "Donald, your body," Dr. Chen gasped, unable to hide her concern. "I'm fine," Donald assured her, his voice resonating with an artificial undertone. "This is necessary. I can access more of the station's capabilities now." As if to prove his point, long-dormant weapon systems came to life around the station. Energy began to build in massive emitters, preparing to unleash devastation upon the Harvester fleet. On the largest grounded Harvester ship, Dr. Marcus Reeves led his team of altered colonists through twisting biomechanical corridors. Their transformed bodies allowed them to slip past internal defenses, blending with the ship's own organic components. "Here," Reeves whispered, his bark-like skin rippling as he interfaced with a pulsating control node. "This should disrupt their main power distribution." As Reeves worked, the ship's internal alarms began to blare. Cascading failures spread through its systems, crippling the massive vessel from within. The tide of battle seemed to be turning in humanity's favor when a massive hyperspace window tore open above Mars. An enormous Harvester command ship emerged, dwarfing all other vessels in the conflict. Its hull bristled with weapons, and massive extraction equipment extended from its underside, ready to strip Mars bare. Donald felt a surge of desperation. He knew the station's weapons, powerful as they were, might not be enough to stop this new threat. With unyielding commitment, he made a decision that would change everything. "I'm initiating a full consciousness transfer," he announced to the stunned crew. "It's the only way to unlock the station's full potential." Before anyone could object, Donald's body began to dissolve into pure energy. The station's power output surged, its weapons charging to levels previously thought impossible. On Mars, Hope felt Donald's sacrifice through their connection. Tears streamed down her metallic sheen face as she raced toward the colony's main power distribution center. Without hesitation, she interfaced with the facility, channeling the excess energy from the station into Mars' defensive systems. The ground shook as massive energy cannons, remnants of ancient denobulan technology, emerged from hidden bunkers across the Martian surface. These long, dormant weapons, powered by the combined energy of the station and Mars itself, targeted the Harvester command ship. A blinding barrage of energy lanced upwards from Mars, joining the devastating assault from the ancient station. The combined firepower tore into the massive Harvester vessel, breaching its hull in dozens of places. Yet still, the behemoth remained operational, its own weapons charging for a retaliatory strike. As the battle reached its crescendo, Hope felt her body changing rapidly, mirroring Donald's transformation. Tendrils of energy extended from her fingertips, allowing her to manipulate the Martian environment with unprecedented control. She poured every ounce of her strength into the defense systems, pushing herself to the very limits of her hybrid physiology. The energy levels on both the ancient station and the Martian surface climbed to critical levels. Hope could feel the power threatening to tear her apart at the molecular level, just as it had done to Donald. Yet she held on, her consciousness stretched between the planet and the orbiting station. In orbit, the Harvester command ship prepared to fire its main weapon, a beam capable of cracking a planet's crust. On the surface, the Martian defense cannons glowed with building power, ready to unleash one final, desperate salvo. The fate of Mars hung in the balance as both sides prepared to unleash their full destructive potential. The next few moments would determine not just the outcome of the battle, but the future of two worlds. Species hung in the balance. The Harvester command ship loomed above, its main weapon primed to unleash devastation upon the Martian surface. Hope's fingers dug into the soil, her body humming with energy as she prepared for one last, desperate push. Suddenly, a familiar presence brushed against her consciousness. Donald's voice, distorted and artificial, echoed through her mind. "Hope, I have a plan, but it's risky." Before she could respond, the ancient weapons station began a rapid descent towards Mars. Its hull glowed white-hot as it plummeted through the atmosphere, leaving a trail of plasma in its wake. The unexpected maneuver caught the Harvester command ship off guard, forcing it to alter its attack pattern. Hope's eyes widened as she realized Donald's intention. She turned to her team, her skin now translucent and pulsing with bioluminescent energy. "We have one shot at this. Follow me." She led her small group of hybrid colonists towards the massive Harvester extraction drill that had been deployed on the Martian surface. As they ran, Hope manipulated the environment around them. Dense fog banks sprouted from the ground, obscuring their approach. Sudden sandstorms whipped up, confusing the Harvester ground forces and providing additional cover. The team encountered heavy resistance as they neared the drill. Harvester drones swarmed towards them, energy weapons blazing. The hybrid colonists engaged in close-quarters combat, their enhanced physiology allowing them to withstand injuries that would have been fatal to unaltered humans. Hope's fingers extended into crackling energy tendrils. She lashed out, disabling multiple drones simultaneously, the air filled with the scent of ozone and burnt circuitry as she short-circuited the alien technology. "Keep moving," she shouted, her voice carrying an otherworldly resonance. Above them, the ancient weapons station continued its fiery descent. The Harvester command ship, realizing the imminent threat, redirected its main weapons. Massive energy beams lanced out, but the station's energy field deflected most of the incoming fire. As they neared the base of the extraction drill, a deafening explosion rocked the Martian landscape. Hope's team stumbled, struggling to maintain their footing. Through the swirling dust, they saw the grounded Harvester ship imploding, the result of Dr. Reeves's sabotage mission. The shockwave disrupted the Harvester communication network across the surface. In orbit, Admiral Winters seized the opportunity. All fighters, concentrate fire on the command ship's weapon arrays. The hybrid-powered weapons of the human and denobulan fighters proved devastatingly effective. They pierced the alien vessel's shields, causing significant damage to its offensive capabilities. Hope's team reached the base of the extraction drill, only to find it protected by a powerful energy field. She gritted her teeth, feeling the overwhelming power coursing through her mutating body. Her skin became almost completely transparent, revealing a network of glowing veins pulsing with energy. "Stand back," she warned her team. Drawing upon her deepening connection with Donald, Hope channeled an unprecedented amount of energy. She raised her arms, and a beam of pure energy erupted from her palms. It struck the drill's protective field, creating a cacophony of light and sound as the two forces clashed. For a moment, it seemed the shield would hold. Then, with a final push that sent waves of pain through her body, Hope shattered the protective barrier. The drill stood exposed, vulnerable to attack. The ancient weapon station, now mere kilometers above the surface, suddenly altered its trajectory. It veered towards the extraction drill, its hull beginning to break apart under the immense strain. Hope's eyes widened as she realized Donald's true plan. "Everyone, retreat!" she shouted, ushering her team away from the drill site. As they ran, the ground beneath their feet trembled violently. The sky lit up with a blinding flash as the ancient weapon station collided with the harvester drill. The resulting explosion was cataclysmic, releasing a shock wave that swept across the Martian landscape. Hope and her team were thrown to the ground by the force of the blast. As they struggled to their feet, they witnessed an awesome and terrifying sight. A massive electromagnetic pulse radiated outward from the impact site, disabling harvester technology across the planet's surface. The command ship, caught in the pulse's radius, lost power and began to drift helplessly in Mars's orbit. Smaller harvester vessels fell from the sky like metallic rain, crashing into the transformed Martian terrain. As the dust began to settle, Hope stood at the edge of the newly formed crater, her body still crackling with residual energy. The hybrid colonists gathered around her, their own bodies showing signs of accelerated mutation due to exposure to the intense energies released during the battle. Hope surveyed the aftermath, her heart heavy with the weight of Donald's sacrifice. Yet as she gazed into the depths of the crater, a faint energy signature caught her attention. It pulsed weakly, barely detectable, but unmistakably present. Her breath caught in her throat. Could it be? Had some part of Donald or the ancient weapon station survived the collision? As Hope contemplated this possibility, she became acutely aware of the challenges that lay ahead. The Martian environment was changing rapidly, transformed by the battle and the released energies. The hybrid population was evolving in ways they had never anticipated, and now the faint hope that Donald might still exist in some form added another layer of complexity to their situation. She turned to her team, their faces a mix of exhaustion, wonder, and uncertainty. "We've won this battle," Hope said, her voice carrying across the windswept Martian landscape. "But our work is far from finished." With the immediate harvester threat neutralized, Hope knew she had to act quickly. She pointed towards the crater, her fingers still glowing with residual energy. "There's something down there, something that might be crucial to our future." As the hybrid colonists prepared to investigate the energy signature, Hope cast her gaze to the stars. The disabled harvester command ship hung in the sky, a stark reminder of the threat they had faced, and might face again. The future of Mars hung in the balance, and Hope knew that her actions in the coming hours and days would shape the destiny of her people. With willpower in her eyes, she took the first step towards the crater, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Hope's eyes widened as she peered into the depths of the crater. The faint energy signature pulsed stronger now, drawing her forward with an inexorable pull. She gestured to her team, and they began a careful descent into the impact site. As they navigated the treacherous terrain, the hybrid colonists' enhanced physiology proved invaluable. Their bark-like skin protected them from jagged debris, while their heightened senses allowed them to detect unstable ground before it gave way beneath their feet. The closer they got to the center, the more intense the energy became. Hope felt it resonate with her own mutated biology, sending tingling sensations across her translucent skin. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled, and a surge of bioelectric energy erupted from the earth. The colonists stumbled back, shielding their eyes from the blinding light. As the energy coalesced, a familiar silhouette took shape. Hope's breath caught in her throat as she recognized the unmistakable form of Donald. His body had undergone a complete transformation. No longer purely human, Donald now stood as a perfect fusion of organic matter and advanced technology. His skin shimmered with a metallic sheen, intricate circuitry patterns pulsing beneath the surface. His eyes, once a warm brown, now glowed with an otherworldly blue light. As Donald's consciousness fully returned, the Martian landscape around them responded. Patches of vegetation sprouted and receded in waves, following the rhythm of his awakening. Hope rushed forward, her own body crackling with energy as she embraced him. The moment their bodies touched, a powerful discharge of energy rippled outward. The terraforming process in the immediate vicinity accelerated rapidly. Barren red soil gave way to lush alien flora that grew and evolved before their eyes. Their reunion was cut short by an urgent transmission from Admiral Winters. His holographic form materialized from Hope's wrist communicator, his face etched with concern. "Princess, we have a situation," Winters reported. "The Harvester command ship may be down, but a significant number of smaller vessels have regrouped. They're preparing for a counterattack. I need all able-bodied colonists at defensive positions around the main settlement immediately." Hope nodded, her face set with grit. "Understood, Admiral. We're on our way." She turned to Donald, their eyes meeting in silent communication. Without a word, they began to move, leading the hybrid colonists back towards the settlement. Their enhanced abilities allowed them to traverse the treacherous Martian terrain with incredible speed and agility. As they ran, Hope marveled at the rapidly evolving ecosystem around them. The hybrid microorganisms they had introduced to Mars were forming symbiotic relationships with the emerging Martian flora and fauna at an unprecedented rate. Dense patches of alien vegetation sprouted in their wake, while new species of insect-like creatures buzzed through the air. Upon reaching the colony's perimeter, Donald immediately interfaced with the central computer system. His technopathic abilities, vastly enhanced by his transformation, allowed him to optimize the defensive grid with ease. Weapon systems recalibrated, shields strengthened, and communication networks expanded under his mental guidance. Meanwhile, Hope focused on fortifying the natural defenses. She stretched out her hands, manipulating the environment with newfound precision. Dense thickets of Martian plants grew to form living walls, their thorny vines intertwining to create an impenetrable barrier. With a gesture, she opened deep chasms in strategic locations, creating natural choke points for any ground assault. As the colony prepared for the impending attack, Dr. Marcus Reeves approached the leadership with an audacious plan. His eyes gleamed with a mix of excitement and apprehension as he addressed Donald, Hope, and Admiral Winters. "We have an opportunity here," Reeves explained, his words coming out in a rush. "The hybrid colonists' unique biology, combined with the captured harvester technology, could be the key to creating a biological weapon against the invaders." Admiral Winters frowned, his holographic brow furrowing. "A biological weapon? That sounds extremely risky, Doctor." Reeves nodded. "It is, but if we can synthesize a virus that targets the harvester's neural networks, we might be able to disable their forces without causing further damage to Mars' ecosystem." After a moment of tense deliberation, Winters gave a reluctant nod. "Proceed, Doctor. But be careful. We can't afford any mistakes." As Reeves hurried off to his laboratory, the first wave of harvester ships entered Mars's atmosphere. The colony's enhanced defenses roared to life under Donald's expert control. Energy beams lanced out with pinpoint accuracy, downing several alien vessels before they could begin their attack run. Hope coordinated with the other hybrid colonists, using their collective abilities to create chaotic conditions for the invading forces. Sudden sandstorms materialized, blinding harvester troops and jamming their sensors. The very ground beneath the aliens' feet seemed to come alive, with tendrils of Martian plants ensnaring their limbs and dragging them down. The battle raged on, with both sides taking heavy losses. The harvesters pressed their attack relentlessly, driven by their imperative to assimilate all life forms. But the colonists fought back with equal fervor, their hybrid adaptations providing unexpected advantages in the harsh Martian conditions. As the conflict reached a fever pitch, Dr. Reeves emerged from his laboratory clutching a vial of glowing liquid. His face was pale, his eyes wide with a mix of triumph and fear. "It's ready," he announced, holding up the vial. "But there's a problem. The virus requires direct physical contact with the harvester neural systems to take effect. We'll need to get it inside their lead ship to deploy it effectively." Donald and Hope exchanged a look, a silent understanding passing between them. They knew what had to be done. "We'll do it," Donald said, his voice resonating with newfound power. "Hope and I can infiltrate their vessel and release the virus directly into their central nervous system." As they prepared for this perilous mission, their bodies underwent further mutations. Donald's technopathic abilities expanded, allowing him to interface with and control even the most alien of technologies. Hope's connection to the Martian environment deepened, granting her the power to manipulate matter on a molecular level. Before launching themselves towards the harvester fleet, the hybrid couple shared a final, passionate embrace. Their bodies glowed with bioelectric energy, perfectly in sync. This intimate moment triggered an unexpected surge in the terraforming process. Massive deposits of subterranean ice began to melt and vaporize, releasing huge amounts of oxygen into the Martian atmosphere. As alarms blared and the colony's defenses began to falter, Donald and Hope prepared to depart. They stood at the edge of the settlement, their bodies humming with power, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them aboard the alien vessel. Hope took a deep breath, feeling the newly oxygen-rich Martian air fill her lungs. She looked at Donald, seeing her own drive reflected in his glowing eyes. Without a word, they launched themselves towards the harvester fleet, their bodies trailing streaks of bioluminescent energy against the red Martian sky. The fate of Mars, and perhaps the entire human denobulan alliance, now rested on their shoulders as they soared towards the heart of the alien armada, Invasion Force. As they approached the lead harvester ship, Donald and Hope's bodies shimmered with bioluminescent energy, their hybrid physiology adapting to the harsh conditions of space. They landed softly on the hull of the massive vessel, their enhanced senses immediately detecting the vibrations of the ship's internal systems. Donald placed his hand on the metallic surface, his technopathic abilities allowing him to interface with the alien technology. "I've found an access point," he whispered to Hope, his voice carrying through their shared bioelectric field. "We can enter through a maintenance hatch near the ship's stern." Hope nodded, her eyes scanning the ship's exterior. With a gesture, she manipulated the molecular structure of the hull, creating a temporary opening. They slipped inside, their bodies seamlessly blending with the organic components of the ship's interior. As they navigated the twisting corridors, the couple encountered a group of harvester workers. Hope's heart raced, but she forced herself to remain calm. Their hybrid physiology proved invaluable as they mimicked the ship's organic matter, becoming nearly invisible to the alien drones. The workers passed by, oblivious to the intruders in their midst. Donald and Hope exchanged a silent look of relief before pressing on towards the ship's central nervous system. Upon reaching the core chamber, Donald immediately interfaced with the neural network. His eyes glowed brightly as he began uploading the synthesized virus. Hope took up a defensive position, her senses on high alert for any sign of danger. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the vessel. The ship's systems had detected the intrusion and were initiating countermeasures. Hope sprang into action, her hands outstretched as she manipulated the environment around them. Organic matter grew rapidly from the walls and floor, forming thick barriers across the chamber's access points. The newly formed growths pulsed with bioelectric energy, reinforcing their structure against potential intruders. "How much longer?" Hope called out, her voice tense as she maintained the barricades. Donald's body had begun to merge with the ship's systems, tendrils of alien technology intertwining with his hybrid flesh. "Almost there," he replied, his voice distorted by the connection. "The virus is spreading through their network." Outside the ship, the effects of their actions became apparent. Harvester vessels began to lose power, drifting aimlessly in Mars orbit. On the planet's surface, the alien ground forces stumbled, their neural links to the main fleet abruptly severed. Admiral Winters, watching from the colony's command center, seized the opportunity. "All units, commence counterattack," he ordered. "Take down those disabled ships." The Human Denobulan Alliance launched a coordinated assault, their weapons finding easy targets in the defenseless Harvester fleet. On the ground, Dr. Reeves led a team of hybrid colonists, their enhanced abilities proving devastatingly effective against the disorganized alien forces. Back on the lead ship, Donald struggled to disengage from the neural network. His consciousness had become entangled with the alien systems, threatening to trap him within the dying vessel. "Donald!" Hope cried out, realizing the danger. She rushed to his side, placing her hands on his merged form. Their hybrid physiologies resonated, creating a powerful bioelectric field. Hope poured all her energy into the connection, her body glowing intensely. "Come back to me," she whispered, focusing her will on separating Donald's consciousness from the ship. With a sudden surge of energy, Donald broke free. His body reformed, separating from the alien technology. He stumbled into Hope's arms, both of them panting from the exertion. "We need to get out of here," Donald said, his voice hoarse. "The ship's systems are failing." They made their way back through the deteriorating vessel, their enhanced abilities allowing them to navigate the chaos. As they escaped, their combined energy signature triggered a massive surge in the terraforming process on Mars. The planet's atmosphere began to thicken rapidly, and vast bodies of water formed on the surface. The accelerated changes sent shock waves through the colony, forcing an immediate evacuation of low-lying areas. Donald and Hope landed on the Martian surface, their bodies further mutated by their ordeal. They found the colony in disarray, struggling to adapt to the rapidly changing environment. New life forms were evolving at an unprecedented rate, transforming the landscape before their eyes. Admiral Winters approached them, his face etched with concern. "We've won the battle, but now we face a new crisis," he said, gesturing to the chaos around them. "Can you help us stabilize the terraforming process?" Donald and Hope exchanged a determined look. They knew their unique connection to both the ancient denobulan technology and the evolving Martian ecosystem made them the best hope for controlling the rapid changes. "We'll create a network of biomechanical control nodes," Donald explained, his mind already formulating a plan. "It should allow us to regulate the terraforming and prevent catastrophic changes." As they prepared to implement their plan, a new threat emerged. The defeated Harvester ships, now adrift in Mars orbit, began to break apart. Debris rained down on the planet, threatening both the colony and the fragile new ecosystem. Hope looked up at the sky, her enhanced vision tracking the falling wreckage. "We need to move fast," she said urgently. "If we don't establish the control network soon, we'll lose everything we fought for." Donald nodded, his body humming with renewed energy. "Let's get to work," he said, taking Hope's hand. Together they set off across the transformed Martian landscape, ready to face the challenges ahead and secure a future for their people on this ever-changing world. As they traversed the transformed Martian landscape, Donald and Hope quickly realized that their task would not be as straightforward as they had initially thought. The rapidly evolving ecosystem began to interfere with their efforts to establish the biomechanical control network, causing unexpected reactions in the control nodes they had placed. "This isn't working," Donald said, his brow furrowed in concentration as he attempted to interface with a malfunctioning node. "The new life forms are growing too fast, interfering with the signals." Hope knelt beside him, her hands hovering over the ground as she sensed the changes occurring beneath the surface. "The planet is alive in ways we never anticipated," she murmured. "We need to adapt our approach." After several failed attempts to stabilize the network, the hybrid couple came to a realization. They needed to synchronize their own hybrid physiologies more closely with Mars's new biosphere if they hoped to establish control over the terraforming process. "I think I know a place where we can do this," Hope said, her eyes scanning the horizon. She pointed to a series of newly formed hills in the distance. I can sense a cave system there, formed by the recent geological changes. They made their way to the hills, their enhanced bodies allowing them to traverse the difficult terrain with ease. As they entered the cave system, they found themselves surrounded by an otherworldly beauty. The walls and ceiling were covered in bioluminescent Martian flora, casting a soft, pulsating glow throughout the cavern. Donald ran his hand along the cave wall, feeling the energy emanating from the alien plants. "It's perfect," he said, turning to Hope. "We can use this environment to amplify our connection to the planet." Understanding what needed to be done, the couple moved deeper into the cave, finding a chamber where the bioluminescent activity was most intense. They stood facing each other, their bodies already beginning to resonate with the surrounding energy. "Are you ready?" Donald asked, taking Hope's hands in his own. She nodded, her eyes glowing with anticipation. "Let's do this." Their bodies began to merge, not physically, but on an energy level. The bioluminescent plants around them pulsed in sync with their heartbeats, creating a mesmerizing light show. As their connection deepened, they felt their consciousness expand, encompassing not just the cave, but the entire planet. The intimate encounter lasted for what seemed like hours, their hybrid bodies intertwining with the very essence of Mars. When they finally separated, both Donald and Hope could feel a profound change in their connection to the planet. As they emerged from the cave, they were greeted by a transformed landscape. The biomechanical control nodes they had previously established were now functioning in perfect harmony with the evolving ecosystem. New plant growth had accelerated around each node, forming natural protective barriers. "It worked," Hope breathed, her eyes wide with wonder as she took in the changes. Donald nodded, his mind already interfacing with the nearest control node. "The network is stable now. We can finally start regulating the terraforming process." Their success in stabilizing the planet allowed the colony to shift its focus to the immediate threat of falling harvester debris. Admiral Winters' holographic form appeared before them, his expression a mix of relief and concern. "Excellent work, you two," he said. "But we're not out of the woods yet. We need to deal with this orbital debris before it causes catastrophic damage." Donald stepped forward, his eyes glowing as he accessed the colony's systems. "I can use my technopathic abilities to track and predict the debris trajectories," he offered. "That should help us prioritize our defenses." Hope turned to the Admiral. "I'll work with Dr. Reeves to develop a method of using the hybrid colonists' abilities to create localized atmospheric disturbances. We should be able to deflect smaller pieces of debris away from critical areas." Winters nodded approvingly. "Get to it. I'll coordinate the overall defense efforts from here." As larger chunks of harvester ships began to enter Mars' atmosphere, Donald interfaced with the colony's defense systems. He redirected power to newly constructed energy shields, successfully protecting key installations from impact. Meanwhile, Hope led a team of hybrid colonists to vulnerable areas, using their collective environmental manipulation abilities to reinforce structures and create natural shock absorbers from rapidly grown Martian vegetation. Their efforts were largely successful, with most of the debris either being deflected or absorbed by their improvised defenses. However, as the crisis seemed to be winding down, a massive piece of harvester technology crashed in a remote region of Mars, far from the colony's protective range. Admiral Winters' hologram appeared once again, his face grave. "We're picking up strange energy readings from the impact site," he reported. "We need to investigate immediately. This could be a potential threat or an opportunity." Donald and Hope exchanged a look, both recognizing the importance of this development. "We'll lead the exploration team," Donald said, speaking for both of them. As they prepared for the mission, gathering equipment and assembling a small team of hybrid colonists, Hope couldn't shake a feeling of anticipation. "Whatever we find out there," she said to Donald as they boarded a transport vehicle, "I think it's going to change everything." Donald nodded, his expression determined. "One way or another, we'll face it together." The transport lifted off, carrying them towards the unknown. As they flew over the transformed Martian landscape, neither Donald nor Hope could have predicted the profound discoveries and challenges that awaited them at the crash site. Discoveries that would not only reshape their understanding of the harvesters, but potentially provide the key to safeguarding their new home against future threats. As Donald and Hope approached the crash site, they felt a sudden surge of energy coursing through their hybrid bodies. The massive piece of harvester technology had embedded itself deep into the Martian soil, creating a crater that pulsed with an otherworldly glow. "This is unlike anything we've encountered before," Donald said, his eyes scanning the wreckage. Hope nodded, her senses attuned to the strange vibrations emanating from the crash site. "It's as if the technology is trying to communicate with us." As they ventured closer, the energy intensified. Suddenly, a holographic interface sprang to life, projecting complex schematics and data streams into the air around them. "It's a blueprint," Donald realized, his technopathic abilities allowing him to decipher the information. "For a planetary defense system." Hope's eyes widened as she grasped the implications. "We could use this to protect Mars from future attacks." Their discovery couldn't have come at a more critical time. As they began to study the alien technology, Admiral Winter's voice crackled over their communication devices. "We've detected a second harvester fleet approaching the solar system," he announced, his tone grave. "They'll reach Mars in less than 48 hours. Donald and Hope exchanged a determined look. "We need to integrate this technology with our existing defenses," Donald said. "It's our best chance at survival." Without wasting a moment, they set to work. Donald used his technopathic abilities to interface with the harvester systems, while Hope channeled her connection to the Martian ecosystem to create a biomechanical hybrid network. As they worked tirelessly, their bodies began to synchronize in ways they had never experienced before. Their hybrid physiologies resonated with each other and the evolving technology around them, creating a seamless fusion of organic and artificial systems. Hours passed like minutes as they pushed themselves to the limit. The once barren landscape around them transformed, sprouting biomechanical structures that pulsed with energy. The atmosphere shimmered as new defense systems came online, enveloping the planet in a protective cocoon. As the deadline approached, Donald and Hope retreated to the heart of the new defense network, a massive chamber filled with pulsating organic circuitry. Here they would make their final push to complete the integration. "We need to fully connect with the system," Hope said, her body glowing with bioluminescent energy. "It's the only way to control it effectively." Donald nodded, understanding the magnitude of what they were about to attempt. Together, then. They joined hands, their bodies intertwining as they merged their consciousness with the planet's new hybrid ecosystem. The sensation was overwhelming. Every aspect of Mars' transformed surface became an extension of their own beings. As their minds expanded to encompass the entire planet, they sensed the approaching harvester fleet. The enemy ships entered the solar system, a swarm of destructive intent bearing down on their new home. But Mars was ready. Donald and Hope, now one with the planet's defenses, sprang into action. Beams of concentrated bioenergy lanced out from the surface, striking the largest harvester ships with pinpoint accuracy. The vessel's systems overloaded, leaving them drifting helplessly in space. Swarms of newly evolved Martian creatures, part organic and part machine, intercepted the smaller harvester craft. These defenders, born from the fusion of human, denobulan, and Martian DNA, proved to be formidable opponents against the invaders. In orbit, Admiral Winters led the combined human denobulan fleet in a coordinated assault. Guided by the heightened perceptions of Donald and Hope, they exploited weaknesses in the harvester formations, inflicting significant damage while minimizing their own losses. On the ground, Dr. Reeves and his team of hybrid colonists worked tirelessly to maintain the integrity of the defense network. Their enhanced abilities allowed them to repair damage and reinforce critical points almost as quickly as the harvesters could inflict it. As the battle raged on, Donald and Hope focused their attention on the harvester flagship, a massive vessel that dwarfed all others. They knew that neutralizing this ship would be key to ending the conflict. Channeling the full power of Mars' defenses, they directed a surge of energy unlike anything they had generated before. The blast engulfed the harvester flagship, but instead of destroying it, the energy began to rewrite its core programming. The effect rippled through the entire harvester fleet. One by one, the enemy ships went dormant, their hostile intentions replaced by a new directive: to aid and protect. As the energy dissipated, Donald and Hope gradually disengaged from the planetary network. They found themselves forever changed, their bodies and minds now inextricably linked to Mars itself. The couple emerged from the control chamber, their skins shimmering with biomechanical enhancements, ready to face the new future they had helped create. Admiral Winter's hologram appeared before them, his face a mixture of awe and relief. "I don't know how you did it, but you've saved us all," he said. "The harvesters have been neutralized, and their technology is now under our control." Donald and Hope smiled, their hands intertwined. "This is just the beginning," Hope said, her eyes gleaming with the knowledge of the incredible transformations yet to come. As they stepped out onto the Martian surface, they saw a world already beginning to change. The hybrid ecosystem, boosted by repurposed harvester technology, was rapidly terraforming the planet. Where once there was only red dust, now patches of alien vegetation began to sprout. Donald turned to Hope, his expression filled with wonder and anticipation. "We've become the guardians of Mars," he said. "Our journey is nowhere near the end." Hope nodded, her gaze sweeping across the transforming landscape. "Together we'll shape the future of this world, and perhaps even beyond." Hand in hand, they set off to explore their new domain, ready to face whatever challenges and wonders awaited them in this brave new world they had helped create.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.